Chapter 183. While everyone was still in shock, Yun Jian's indifferent yet sarcastic voice was heard again. TSK. You can't even beat me, what right do you have to fight the guys from country Z? Yun Jian's words completely humiliated Lawson, who was lying on the ground. However, Chen Sini, who was standing far away, almost tripped when she heard Yun Jian's words. Yun Jian was someone who had killed the top 10 assassins in the international assassin rankings. Who here could beat her? However, from Yun Jian's words, it sounded like Lawson could not even beat a girl, let alone a guy. In other words, he was even worse than a girl. Chen Sini did not expect Yun Jian to have the ability to lie through her teeth. She covered her mouth and snickered at the side. That's right. Foreigner, you can't even beat a girl from country Z, what right do you have to fight us? Ha ha ha, the surrounding guys started to jeer along with Yun Jian's words. Their blood was boiling and they were suddenly in awe of Yun Jian. Lawson struggled to get up from the ground and stood up in pain. Yun Jian did not hit him hard just now, so he could still stand up on his own. After standing up, Lawson looked at Yun Jian with his sinister eyes. He pointed at Yun Jian and said indignantly, that was a sneak attack. Despicable. Despicable. You want to fight me again? Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and a murderous aura surged from her skinny body. This murderous aura made Lawson freeze. He trembled from the bottom of his heart. Although Lawson was a mischievous person, he knew his limits. He knew that Yun Jian had hit him hard just now. Even if he used all his strength, he would still end up in the same state. He said that Yun Jian had attacked him sneakily just to save his face. Now that Yun Jian wanted to fight him again, Lawson naturally would not agree to it. No, since you guys are guests from country Z, we shouldn't fight and kill. We should compete in something else. Lawson said as he wiped the cold sweat on his face with his sleeve. How despicable. Everyone felt a wave of mockery in their hearts. Lawson could not beat Yun Jian, so he wanted to compete in something else. How could he make it sound so nice? If he did not want to fight and kill, how could he fight Yun Jian just now? Anytime. Yun Jian crossed her arms and looked at Lawson with a frivolous gaze. He wanted to compete in something else? She would fight him to the end. Just because of Lawson's disdainful words, she would let him know what it meant to be inferior to others in everything. Comparisons were odious. When Yun Jian was slaying God, she had come in contact with everything. Assassination, explosives, heavy weapons, car racing, computer programming, and so on. As long as it was mentioned, there was nothing that she was not involved in. Lawson suddenly curled his lips into a sinister and terrifying smile. All right, let's compete in computer skills. How about that? He knew that in 1998, there were very few computer classes in schools in country Z, computers were not popularized yet and Yun Jian and the rest did not even know what a computer was. Now that their school had started to offer computer classes, he definitely had a huge advantage in this aspect. Therefore, he wanted to compete in computer skills with Yun Jian. As soon as Lawson said that, the people around him became even angrier. That's despicable. Foreigner, how shameless can you be? Someone shouted. Most of the students from country Z had just come into contact with computers. Some of them had not even touched a computer before. How could Lawson suggest this? Wasn't this clearly using his advantage to bully others? All right, computer skills. No problem. Just then, Yun Jian's leisurely voice echoed throughout the crowd. Chapter 184. Listening to Lawson and Yun Jian's conversation, Miss Maki and the other students could not even get a word in edgewise. In the end, they could only watch as Lawson led the team to Yana High School's computer room. As a native of country Y, Miss Maki did not object to the little competition between students from both countries. Thus, the group headed to the computer room. Yunyi walked beside Yun Jian while Chen Sini followed on Yun Jian's left. Xiao Jian, you know how to operate a computer? Yun Yi was worried about this, so he went closer to his younger sister and asked in a low voice. "Don't worry, brother." Yunjian did not explain further, merely smiling with her eyes squinted. Hearing Yunjian's words, Yunyi did not ask further despite his worry. Ever since he returned home to celebrate his mother's birthday that week, his younger sister had changed. She was becoming less and less like his younger sister. It was undeniable that he liked his younger sister even more now. Country-wise, Yana High School was an internationally renowned high school with a middle and high school section. There was a computer lesson in Yana High School's curriculum as well. When the group came to the computer classroom, even the more affluent students who had computers at home were surprised by the rows of computers in the classroom. There were so many computers here. They had never seen a computer room with so many computers, so they could not help exclaiming. Yunjian was the only one who was unfazed by the rows of computers in the room. In fact, computers were about to be popularized in Country Z in 1998. Some of the elite schools in Country Z had already started offering computer classes. Longmen City was still developing rapidly, but it was not far from offering computer classes. "Humph, little brat from Country Z, you're so short-sighted." Lawson could not help but laugh coldly when he saw this. There was an indescribable sense of ridicule in his words. In spite of it, no one paid any attention to Lawson's grumbling, so he gave up. The computer room here was open. None of the computers were turned off. They were all turned on. This made it convenient for Yana High School students and teachers, as they could use the computers here anytime they wanted. Since the computers were turned on, the students and teachers did not have to wait for the computers to turn on even if they wanted to use them for a while. Lawson glanced at Yunjian from the corner of his eyes and said in a mocking tone, "Ha, please." Yunjian ignored Lawson's sarcasm and went to a computer under everyone's gaze and sat on the bench. Lawson followed suit and sat in front of the computer beside Yunjian. "What are we competing on?" Yunjian held the mouse and scrolled up and down and pressed on the keyboard twice before turning to ask Lawson. "We're competing to see who's faster." Lawson chuckled. Manipulating and controlling other people's computers, this was a hacker's skill. Lawson cursed in his heart. His computer skills were better than others because he had an uncle who was an expert hacker. He was working in the technical department of one of the top 10 international corporations, Rong and Yao Corporation. He had learned a lot of hacking skills from his uncle, such as sophisticated skills like manipulating other people's computers. Hence, he wanted to compete with Yunjian in this. Many people probably did not even know how to program other people's computers. What more to control other people's computers? What no one knew was that Lawson's uncle, the hacker expert in Lawson's mind, was working for Rongyao Company, Yunjian's subordinate, the Temptress. Chapter 185. Pfft. Foreigner, don't go too far. You're shameless. Why are you picking your own specialty to compete with us? Someone shouted at Lawson as he could not stand it anymore. What's wrong? Don't tell me that no one in Country Z knows how to hack such a simple computer program. Lawson was not afraid of that. He fought back even more boldly. As soon as Lawson said that, the group of friends with him began to murmur. The students from Country Z were instantly enraged. However, everyone understood that Yunjian did not know how to hack a computer program. Manipulating other people's computers, isn't this something that only hackers can do? Of course I know how to do it. Just as everyone was getting anxious, Yunjian smiled gently. Hee, then I'll start first. Lawson could not wait to show off his talent. Hearing the adoration from the people around him, he opened his mouth to speak. Yunjian crossed her arms. She did not touch the computer. Instead, she signaled to Lawson, "You can start." Then, Lawson reached out his hand and started typing on the computer keyboard. Lawson's speed at operating the computer was not considered fast. However, in the eyes of the group of students, they had to admit that he did have some skills. After about 30 minutes, Lawson finally operated his computer and created a program. He then linked it to the computer ID and pressed the "Yes" button on the screen that popped up. The computer in front of Yun Jian was controlled remotely by Lawson. Lawson opened the whiteboard. At the same time, the computer in front of Yun Jian was controlled by Lawson to open the whiteboard. Lawson drew a pig's head on the whiteboard. The image of a pig's head appeared on Yun Jian's computer. When the people around saw this, they could not help but be surprised that Lawson actually knew how to hack and control Yun Jian's computer. He actually drew a pig's head on his computer and could control Yun Jian's computer to do the same thing as his computer. For the sake of the atmosphere, Lawson's mischievous friends even clapped their hands. "Lawson, good job. You're the pride of Country Y." A naughty boy echoed. On the other hand, the students from Country Z all had cold expressions on their faces. They had to admit that Lawson was indeed very powerful, but at the same time, they couldn't help but feel angry. The actions of Lawson and his friends were undoubtedly mocking Country Z for having no one. Mocking them for being pigs. Is that all? At this moment, Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. Her pleasant voice echoed throughout the hall, and at the same time, it ruined Lawson's complacency. "What do you mean?" Lawson's expression changed abruptly. Then, he taunted, "If you know how to do it, then do it." Lawson was certain that even if Yun Jian knew how to use computers and had touched them before, she wouldn't know how to operate someone else's computer. This was hacking technology. Would she? How could she? Even for himself, it took him 5 years to learn hacking skills from his uncle before he was able to achieve what he had today. Hacking technology wasn't that easy to learn. Just as Lawson was secretly criticizing Yun Jian, he saw Yun Jian stretch out her fair hands. Her tender fingers touched the keyboard. Then, Yun Jian played with her fingers. Her fingers tapped on the keyboard quickly and nimbly. She only pressed 3 keys on the keyboard, and the computer controlled by Lawson returned to normal. Then, Yun Jian's fingers tapped on the keyboard faster and faster. In just 10 breaths. Beep beep beep, a rapid beep was heard. Then, everyone saw that all the computers in the computer room were controlled by Yun Jian's computer. She controlled all the computers in 10 seconds. Everyone looked at Yun Jian in horror. However, the shock wasn't over yet. Not long after, a teacher ran in from the door and shouted in perfect English, "My God, what's wrong with the mainframe network here? Why did all the computers in the school suddenly go out of control?" After hearing that, everyone turned to look at Yun Jian, who was sitting in front of the computer table leisurely. Chapter 186. The teacher who ran in was giving a computer lesson to her classmates next door. In the end, all the computer programs were paralyzed at that time. Every computer's screen suddenly turned black and could not be restored no matter how hard she clicked on it. She thought that there was a problem with the computers in her classroom, but when she ran around the entire building, she realized that all the computers were paralyzed. The broadband in this open computer room controlled the entire school's network, so she ran in. The teacher did not know that her words caused a huge uproar in everyone's ears. "No, it's impossible. How is this possible?" Lawson smiled bitterly as he stood up and shook his head desperately. How was this possible? Even his uncle, a top-notch hacker, could not take control of all the computers in Yana High School in just 10 seconds. 10 seconds, what did that mean? Lawson suddenly recalled that his uncle had told him about a person. That person was the top hacker in the world. No one knew her identity, but she was skilled in hacking. As long as she had a computer, she could do anything. She could even easily hack into the system of a top multinational company and completely destroy the other party's software in less than 10 seconds. Yun Jian's methods were 80% similar to the person Lawson's uncle had mentioned. You. Lawson suddenly pointed at Yun Jian and shook his head. Impossible, how can you be that person? Lawson's strange behavior shocked everyone present. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and supported her chin with her hand. She looked at Lawson and suddenly revealed a strange smile. Lawson's aura immediately deflated and he became completely silent. The group of people around them were shocked and even looked at Yun Jian in horror. In the end, Lawson lowered his eyes as if he had lost all his arrogance. When he looked up at Yun Jian again, his eyes were no longer as aggressive as before. "You win," Lawson said to Yun Jian. Lawson's words made the students from Country Z scream in excitement. Yana High School was an international school, so they came here to study. However, the students of Yana High School had always looked down on them. It was because they came here to learn from a top-notch famous school. It could be considered as them paying respect to the other party. On the other hand, Yun Jian's actions just now had viciously regained face for their school, and even for all the Z's citizens. It wasn't as if Country Z didn't have people. "Jian, you're amazing." Chen Sini ran to Yun Jian gleefully and gave her a thumbs up. Yun Jian just smiled. What Yun Jian didn't expect was that Lawson and the others were in awe of her ever since she showed off her computer skills by controlling all the computers. But that was also true. In this world, the winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. In the following days, Yun Jian and the others studied and attended classes with the students of Yana High School. This was what advanced studies were all about. Everyone was here to experience the process of attending a foreign high school. At the same time, everyone here spoke English. Although Yin Yi, Chen Sini, and the others' pronunciation was not standard, they could still communicate with the people in Country Y. In the blink of an eye, it was almost the end of the week's advanced studies. To send off Yun Jian and her friends from Country Z, Miss Maki held a small farewell party in a KTV. Teacher Maki had booked a large KTV room. At this moment, everyone was happily gathered here. Yun Jian sat on the side as well while Chen Sini stood in the center with a microphone and sang loudly. No one saw Lu Xiuxiu, who sat in the corner with a strange smile on her face. She poured a packet of powder into a glass of red wine and stirred it twice. Chapter 187. Lu Xiuxiu poured a second glass of red wine and added the same condiments after adding the first glass of red wine. After doing all this, she pretended to be very hesitant and sat in place to wait for a while. "Xiuxiu, don't just sit there. Come and play with the rest." Tong Yulan walked over to Lu Xiuxiu out of kindness when she saw her sitting alone in the corner. All the students were currently circling around Yun Jian. Lu Xiuxiu, on the other hand, was sitting alone in the corner. Tong Yulan walked over to Lu Xiuxiu out of kindness. She didn't know that Lu Xiuxiu was waiting for her to say that. "Yulan, Lu Xiuxiu pretended to look at Yun Jian awkwardly and said to Tong Yulan with tears in her eyes, "I was so rude to those two junior sisters a few days ago. I can't stand it. Yulan, you know that I'm a soft-hearted person with a sharp tongue." Tong Yulan knew that Lu Xiuxiu had quarreled with Chen Sini a few days ago. Now that so many people were flattering Yun Jian and Yun Jian was Chen Sini's good friend, Lu Xiuxiu felt embarrassed. Lu Xiuxiu must be too embarrassed to walk over to play with the others. "Xiuxiu, it's okay. Those two junior sisters are very kind. I even spoke to them just now. If you apologize, they'll definitely forgive you." Tong Yulan thought that Lu Xiuxiu was really going to reconcile with Chen Sini and Yun Jian, so she quickly helped her. Lu Xiuxiu rolled her eyes at Tong Yulan in disdain. She secretly cursed Tong Yulan for hooking up with Chen Sini and Yun Jian behind her back. However, Lu Xiuxiu pretended to be harmless. She blinked her eyes and tried to squeeze out tears. "Yulan, how about this? I have 2 glasses of red wine here. Give them to the 2 girls. If they agree to drink it, I'll apologize to them in person." Lu Xiuxiu pushed the 2 glasses of red wine to Tong Yulan as she spoke. "Don't tell them that I poured the red wine for them. I'm afraid that they won't drink it if they find out." Lu Xiuxiu was afraid that Tong Yulan would say that, so she continued. "Because I feel that if I apologize to them after they drink the red wine I poured for them, the chances of them forgiving me will be higher. Don't you think so, Yulan?" Tong Yulan was intimidated by Lu Xiuxiu. She really thought that Lu Xiuxiu was going to apologize sincerely. Good. Then it's settled, Xiuxiu. Tong Yulan thought that Lu Xiuxiu had changed, so she quickly took the 2 glasses of red wine and ran towards Yunjian and Qinsini. At this moment, Lu Xiuxiu revealed a strange smile. She took out her phone from her trouser pocket and sent a text message to an account. Are you ready? I'll call them out later. You guys block them at the door. Capture him for me. Yunjian had already sensed that the pair of eyes in the corner had been staring at her and Qinsini for a long time. Until Tong Yulan came over with 2 glasses of red wine and handed them to Yunjian and Qinsini. Junior sisters, you must be tired, right? I poured the red wine for you. Have a sip. Tong Yulan's innocent look was hard to reject. Yunjian and Qinsini picked up the glasses of red wine. Qinsini finished it in one gulp. Chapter 188. There was a concoction in the glass of red wine. Yunjian could smell it just now. What kind of poison had she not eaten when she was slaying God in her previous life? She was immune to all poisons since a long time ago. However, Yunjian had already noticed that her current body was the same as her body in her previous life. Yunjian had already noticed this when she was in Xinjiang town. However, the concoction in the glass of red wine was not strong. It would only make one feel dizzy and weak after drinking it. Of course, it was ineffective on Yunjian. Yunjian did not think that Tong Yulan had purposely poured the red wine for her and Qinsini to drink. She glanced sideways and caught a glimpse of Lu Xiuxiu, who was observing the situation from a corner not far away. It seemed like someone had a death wish. She would play along with her then. The farewell banquet continued. Tong Yulan followed Lu Xiuxiu's instructions and made Yunjian and Qinsini drink the red wine. She then ran to Lu Xiuxiu. Xiuxiu, they've drunk the red wine. Can you apologize now? Tong Yulan naively thought that Lu Xiuxiu would really apologize. Yulan, thank you. Lu Xiuxiu pretended to thank Tong Yulan sincerely. She then lowered her voice and said to Tong Yulan. Yulan, it's not good for me to apologize in front of everyone, right? Can you get the 2 of them outside, please? We can come in together after we've reconciled. This isn't a good thing after all. I'll be embarrassed if everyone knows about it. No problem. Tong Yulan was thinking that she had done a great job if Lu Xiuxiu could apologize to the 2 juniors. She gestured an okay with her hand and turned to run to Yunjian and Qinsini. Yunjian had seen Tong Yulan and Lu Xiuxiu's interaction, but she did not make a sound. At this time, Qinsini was so weak that she couldn't exert any strength. Because she had drunk some wine just now, her cheeks were red and she was a little drunk. She felt like her soul had been turned upside down. Can you guys come out with me for a while? I want to talk to you guys in private. Tong Yulan was excited when she ran over. She couldn't wait to ask Qinsini and Yunjian to go out with her to see Lu Xiuxiu. Then, Lu Xiuxiu apologized to them and they reconciled. Oh, sure. Although Qinsini was a little drunk, she could still understand Tong Yulan's words and agreed immediately. Yunjian also agreed. The 3 of them opened the door of the KTV and walked out. Because it was common for people to go to the bathroom, Yunjian and the others did not attract much attention when they went out. Only Yunyi glanced at Yunjian and the other 2. She didn't think it was inappropriate. After all, no matter how hard she thought about it, he would never think that someone would plot against his sister. On the other hand, his sister was so powerful. If someone wanted to harm her, they had to have the ability to do so. When Yunjian and the others opened the door of the KTV and took 2 steps out, a few tall and strong men rushed towards them before Lu Xiuxiu arrived. You. Tong Yulan was shocked. She had just opened her mouth when the group of men covered her mouth. The word "you" was completely obliterated by the noise of the KTV. The men ran over and tied up Yunjian, Qinsini, and Tong Yulan swiftly. They covered their mouths with black tape and ran away with them. Chapter 189. These men were obviously trained and most likely specialized in this line of work. Hence, they were very experienced. Yunjian didn't resist and the men tied her hands and feet easily. Yunjian and the other two girls couldn't make a sound because their mouths were covered with black tape. They were dragged out of the KTV. Even if there were passers-by who saw them, they wouldn't help them. After all, no one wanted to get into trouble. After dragging Yunjian and the other two girls out of the KTV, the men threw them into a van and drove away. Everything seemed to be done stealthily, but in fact, there were many loopholes. Oh. 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 Tong Yulan widened her eyes in horror. She was terrified. She had brought Chen Sini and Yunjian to look for Lu Xiuxiu at the entrance so that Lu Xiuxiu could apologize to the two girls. What was going on now? Why would someone kidnap them? He had to admit that Tong Yulan was very naive and stupid. Until now, she still hadn't connected the dots. Shut up. One of the men shouted at Tong Yulan when he saw her struggling. He spoke in Chinese. These men were from country Z. Tong Yulan was frightened when the man shouted at her. She had never seen such a scene before. She was so scared that tears flowed down her cheeks. On the other hand, Chen Sini didn't make a sound. She didn't show any panic or fear. Yunjian, on the other hand, looked calm and relaxed. She didn't look like she was being kidnapped but was taking a ride in the car. The van quickly turned around countless corners and stopped in a gloomy wilderness. Capture all of them. The man who shouted at Tong Yulan just now seemed to be the leader of the group. He ordered his men. Then, Yunjian and the other two girls were pushed down from the van. Yunjian and the other two girls stood in a row. The burly leader dug his nose and waved his hand. The other two burly men next to him tore off the black tape covering the trio's mouths one after another. Who are you guys? Tong Yulan widened her eyes and sobbed in fear. Who are we? Ha ha ha. We're here to *CK you guys up. The man laughed out loud and sized up Yunjian and the other two girls. Yunjian, Chen Sini, and Tong Yulan had exquisite looks. They were so beautiful that they had their own advantages. Moreover, they had exquisite figures and slim figures. The coarse man and his group were itching just by looking at it. You can't do this. We have no grudges. Tong Yulan was already sobbing. No grudges? Ha, little sister, you can only blame yourself for trusting others too easily. Originally, you weren't part of our plan, but since you're here, you're out of luck today. The coarse man said as he unbuckled the belt around his waist. The man's words had a deeper meaning. Initially, they only wanted to catch Yunjian and Chen Sini. However, in order to prevent Tong Yulan from telling on them, they caught her as well. Big brother, the camera is ready. A man with squinting eyes reported to the man. He was even looking at Yunjian and the other two girls lecherously. Huh, you're in charge of filming the entire process. I want the one in the middle. You guys decide what to do with the other two. The man stared at Yunjian. He unbuckled his belt and walked toward Yunjian. He looked extremely perverted. Yunjian's looks were the most exquisite among the three of them. Are you sure you want me? Yunjian raised her brow and asked the man in return. The man was stunned. Clearly, he did not expect Yunjian to not be afraid. However, he did not think too much about it. Instead, he walked toward Yunjian with a sneaky smile. Little beauty, it's you. You can't escape. I took a liking to you today because of your... Before he could say the word honor, the man suddenly stopped in his tracks. He had already taken off his pants. Right now, he was only wearing his underwear. The reason why he stopped in his tracks was that Yunjian removed the ropes that tied her hands and feet and stood up. Chapter 190. No one saw that Yunjian had just flipped her hands behind her back, and a blade appeared in her hands. She cut the rope with the blade, and the weak rope broke. Are you talking about this? Yunjian stood up with an evil smile. She picked up the rope that was tied to her, but she cut it with one hand. You tied it too loosely, and it broke by itself. Yunjian blinked and raised her eyebrows. After saying that, she threw the rope directly to where the coarse man and the others were. Tied it too loosely? How was that possible? The coarse man exclaimed. Just now, he was afraid that they would break free from the rope, so when he was in the car, he deliberately checked the tightness of the rope. Even if it was a bull, it wouldn't be able to break free from the rope, let alone the drugged Yunjian. How did she do it? Obviously, the coarse man and the others all thought that Yunjian and Chinsini were drugged. Even if they had the strength of a bull, their bodies would definitely be weak at this time. But why didn't Yunjian have any trace of being drugged? Now, it's time to settle our accounts. Yunjian clasped her hands together, and the bones of her two hands made a crisp "ge-ge" sound. The coarse man and the others were frightened when they heard it. Hee, so what if you broke free from the rope? The coarse man and the others quickly realized that Yunjian was just a little girl. So what if she wasn't drugged? So what if she broke free from the rope? Could it be that they, a group of big men, couldn't beat this little girl? The coarse man secretly cursed. After he took turns with the three of them, he would record a video and send it to Lu Xiuxiu, and then he would receive a commission. So, what did it mean even if Yunjian untied herself? Little beauty, if you know what's good for you, then come over yourself. Big brother promises to treat you well. Otherwise, Big brother will make you regret being born. The coarse man rubbed his hands and smiled evilly. The coarse man didn't know that his words touched Yunjian's bottom line. Yunjian had never been a soft-hearted person. She could not accept that this boorish man was using words to flirt with her. More importantly, would slaying God regret being born? Hee, it had been a long time since she had heard such interesting words. The last person who said this had already gone to hell. The grass on his grave should be 10 feet tall. Yunjian admitted that she might try to keep a low profile in Longmen City or in school. However, once she left Country Z, she could no longer keep a low profile. Heh. Yunjian snorted softly. Her sudden outburst of hostility made the coarse man feel a chill run down his spine. However, due to his pride as a man, he still stood in the same spot and proudly raised his neck. After Yunjian spoke, she suddenly walked towards the coarse man. She walked very slowly, but it made people feel frightened. The coarse man gulped subconsciously. You, what are you doing? Since you like doing this so much, I'll cripple you. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. When she came to the coarse man, she suddenly picked up her pace. While the coarse man was still in a daze, Yunjian sent him flying with a kick. At the same time, she flung out a shiny dagger. Everyone was stunned by the dagger that she had conjured out of nowhere. In the next second, the coarse man's heart-wrenching scream rang in everyone's hearts. Ah! 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 Mine! Mine! Everyone turned around and saw the burly man clutching his crotch. His crotch was covered in dark red blood. Seeing this, the men present clamped their thighs together. Chapter 191. Yunjian's dagger pierced through the vulgar man's genitals. She wanted him to die without any descendants. The men who were with the vulgar man all looked at Yunjian in horror. There was no longer any desire for a beauty in their eyes. Instead, it was as if they had seen a devil. No, Yunjian was the devil. As for what Yunjian said, no one dared to doubt her anymore. We were wrong. We were wrong. Please spare our lives, heroine. The first to beg for mercy was the man who had prepared the camera and was in charge of recording the video. The moment the man begged for mercy, the surrounding men who were working under the vulgar man also started begging for mercy. What a joke. Even the vulgar man was kicked away by Yun Jian and cut off his genitals with a swing of the dagger. He didn't even have a chance to struggle. They weren't fools. If they didn't beg for mercy now, did they really want to wait for their genitals to be cut off and die without any descendants? Yun Jian ignored the group of men. She turned around to untie Chen Sini and Tong Yulan, who was looking at her in horror. Chen Sini had been kidnapped once before. This time, it was probably because Yun Jian was around, so she wasn't that afraid. On the contrary, it was Tong Yulan's first time witnessing Yun Jian's methods. After she was untied, she was still in a daze. Yun Jian untied the two of them and stood in the middle of the group of men who were begging for mercy. At this moment, she didn't seem like an ordinary junior high school girl. Instead, she seemed like a high and mighty king. You guys worked together with him to deal with me just now. Why shouldn't I kill all of you like how I killed him? Yun Jian exuded a vicious aura. She pointed at the vulgar man who had fainted and was rolling on the ground and said. As she spoke, she raised her hand and a sharp dagger appeared in her hand. Everyone was shocked that Yun Jian could magically produce a dagger. At the same time, the men couldn't help but clamp their legs together as they recalled the scene just now. No, no. The man with the camera just now shouted twice. Then he rolled his eyes and cunningly thought of a way to save himself. He shouted at Yun Jian. As long as you let us go, I'll tell you who wants to harm you. Yun Jian was well aware of who was trying to harm her. However, in order to let an innocent girl like Tong Yulan know the truth, Yun Jian pretended that she didn't know anything. She asked, who is it? Yes, it's a girl named Lu Xiuxiu. Boom. Sure enough, when Tong Yulan heard the truth, her mind exploded. She suddenly recalled the scenes from before. Xiuxiu, how could it be her? Why does she want to harm us? Tong Yulan's face turned pale, her expression extremely ugly. Yun Jian only wanted to let Tong Yulan know that she shouldn't be too naive. Otherwise, she wouldn't even know that she had been cheated by the people around her. She had no intention of comforting Tong Yulan or anything else. She curled her lips and looked at the group of men in front of her. With a faint smile, she said, it's not impossible for me to let you go, as long as you do something for me. In the KTV private room. When Yun Yi saw that his younger sister hadn't returned after going out for so long, he asked a girl to help him check the ladies' room. At this moment, he had already grabbed his jacket and went out to look for her. After Yun Jian and the rest were taken away, Lu Xiuxiu, who had pretended that she had just returned from the ladies' room, walked back to the KTV private room. At this moment, she was smiling. Beep, 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 suddenly, her phone's light flashed. Lu Xiuxiu hurriedly opened the message bar and saw a message from the other party. Chapter 192. Seeing that the matter was settled, Lu Xiuxiu immediately stood up. She casually found an excuse to walk out of the KTV and rushed to the hotel where the message came from. At this time, Lu Xiuxiu only knew that the matter was settled. She didn't even think about why the group of men wanted to give her the video in the hotel. She went there full of joy. She couldn't wait to see the video of Chen Sini, who dared to go against her, and Chen Sini's beautiful and delicate friend, Yun Jian, who she always disliked, being raped by men. She also wanted to see the response after the video was released. Lu Xiuxiu didn't realize how much damage it would do to an ordinary girl if she really succeeded in doing so. Maybe she just wanted to take revenge for a moment of pleasure. Ligu Hotel, in front of room 3011. Lu Xiuxiu excitedly knocked on the door. The door was immediately opened. Come in, the video is inside. The man who came out to open the door said to Lu Xiuxiu in a neutral tone. Lu Xiuxiu didn't even think about it. She even thought that this matter was supposed to be a secret deal, so she stepped inside and deliberately closed the door. The moment Lu Xiuxiu entered the room, the man covered Lu Xiuxiu's mouth and shouted into the room, "Brothers, come out. This woman caused our big brother to lose his manhood and almost caused us to become like this.
If we don't K her until she cries today, I'm a bastard. In an instant, a row of men walked out of the room. They were only wearing underwear and bare arms, and they all looked at Lu Xiuxiu with lecherous and angry eyes. This group of people was undoubtedly the group of men under the vulgar man. Oh. 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 Lu Xiuxiu, whose mouth was covered, shook her head desperately. She fiercely widened her eyes and looked at the group of men who were crowding towards her in horror. At this moment, Lu Xiuxiu completely tasted the taste of despair. Suddenly, the room was filled with charm. The men's lewd laughter mixed with the desperate cries of women begging for mercy. Outside the door, Yun Jian and the other two watched Lu Xiuxiu enter the room. Not long after, a series of ambiguous and creepy screams came from the room. Are we going too far? Tong Yulan lowered her head. Her body was trembling. She was afraid. Everything that happened tonight was unforgettable for her for the rest of her life. Too much. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. She suddenly laughed coldly. If you didn't go overboard, then the person in the room right now would be you. After that, Yun Jian didn't explain and left with Chen Sini. He left behind Tong Yulan, who was confused and on the verge of collapsing, with a pale face. In a certain country in the south, Ce and her two subordinates, Adam and Mo Sen, were currently staying in a hotel. They were preparing for tomorrow's exploration of the ancient tomb. Beep beep beep. Mo Sen's laptop flashed twice. He suddenly lifted his laptop and placed it in front of Ce. Someone wants to bully her? Ce frowned when he saw the news on the screen. Although he was outside, Yun Jian's every move these days was under his control. Yes, but that person's penis has already been broken by her. That woman has also received her retribution, Mo Sen reported indifferently. Ce suddenly stood up. When he heard that someone wanted to bully Yun Jian, his anger spread through his entire body. Only his penis has been broken? Send someone to kill that group of people. As for that woman, sell her to a brothel. Since she likes to be a prostitute, let her be a prostitute for life. Chapter 193. Lu Xiuxiu, who was currently experiencing immense despair, did not know that a bigger storm was waiting for her. And all of this was because she had done a series of irrational actions in a moment of anger, which caused her to offend someone she shouldn't have. On their way back to the KTV, Yun Jian and Chen Sini happened to bump into Yun Yi, who was looking for them anxiously outside. Yun Jian and Chen Sini had been missing for more than an hour, but the people in the KTV room had yet to notice. However, as the elder brother, Yun Yi did not want to disturb the joyous atmosphere of the group. Moreover, he was worried about his younger sister since they were overseas and not in Longmen City, so he went in circles outside to search for them alone. It was not until he bumped into Yun Jian and Chen Sini walking back side by side on the road. Yun Yi ran over, his tall frame blocking the duo's path. Where did you guys go just now? Yun Yi panted. It was obvious that he had been searching for Yun Jian and Chen Sini for a long time as he asked them worriedly, out of breath. Go, we thought the KTV was too noisy and boring. We're going back to Longmen City tomorrow, so we wanted to come out for a walk. Don't you think so, Sini? Yun Jian was afraid that Yun Yi would be worried if he knew the truth, so she and Chen Sini had come up with a response. Therefore, the words that came out of her mouth were smooth. Yeah. Chen Sini was still a little sensitive to lying, but she agreed with Yun Jian. Yun Yi did not notice Chen Sini's reaction. He breathed a huge sigh of relief when he found them. Then, Yun Yi told Yun Jian solemnly, Xiao Jian, don't run out on your own without telling me next time. I'll be worried. You must at least tell me when you come out next time. Faced with Yun Yi's genuine concern, Yun Jian felt a warmth in her heart as she nodded. I know, brother. Yun Yi nodded as well. Then, the three of them went back to the KTV. Lu Xiuxiu did not return for the entire night. In spite of it,
one could only imagine how pathetic Lu Xiuxiu was. Until the next evening when they took the plane back to Longmen City, Yun Jian and the rest did not see Lu Xiuxiu again. Only Instructor Ding mentioned Lu Xiuxiu briefly, saying that her parents had come to pick her up in the middle of the night. Since it had happened, the instructors could not say much. In addition, Lu Xiuxiu's presence was not prominent, so other than Yun Jian, Chen Sini and Chen Sini who knew about it, no one else was interested in discussing it. Before boarding the plane, Lawson brought his mischievous brothers to send Yun Jian off. He vowed to Yun Jian, next time, Lawson, will win against you. Yun Jian found someone like Lawson who was brave enough to take responsibility for his actions and never played tricks behind people's backs. She simply replied, I'll be waiting. After that, she narrowed her eyes. The moment they boarded the plane back to Country Z, it was the end of their week-long study abroad. Of course, the students learned a lot from it. They were deeply enlightened during this period of study abroad. When they returned to Longmen City, the school gave Yun Jian, Chen Sini and the rest a few days off so that they could have time to recuperate and rest. Hence, Yun Jian had been loitering in the military training camp and at home these days. At the same time, she quickly found Lu Haoze, the boy who knew that she had hypnotized him. Lu Haoze was a first-year student in a high school. Moreover, the high school he attended was the same as his cousin, Qin Fenger, who was in the same school. It was Friday at the entrance of Tanxi High School after school. Yun Jian stood at the school entrance with her arms crossed. Her pretty face and slender figure attracted many passers-by's attention. Chapter 194. Yun Jian watched as batch after batch of students walked out of the school gate with their heavy backpacks. She waited for about 5 minutes before a group of boys walked out of the school gate. Among the boys, there was a handsome and childlike boy who stood out the most. Lu Haoze, who was standing in the middle of the group, also couldn't help but look shy and childish. Lu Haoze. Yun Jian walked over and waved at him. When Yun Jian called out, not only Lu Haoze, but also the group of unfamiliar boys next to him all looked at Yun Jian. Seeing that Yun Jian was a standard beauty, some of the more active boys started to tease Lu Haoze. Yo, where did this little beauty come from? Lu Haoze, the little beauty is calling you. Why didn't you reply? A tall and thin boy standing next to Lu Haoze teased him. Lu Haoze's cheeks instantly flushed red. He was so shy that even the tips of his ears turned red. He couldn't even say a word to explain himself. He only looked up at Yun Jian for a moment, then quickly lowered his head and asked in a small voice, why are you looking for me? He definitely recognized Yun Jian. Yun Jian wasn't shy. She walked over and stood in front of Lu Haoze and the group of tall and thin boys. She said to Lu Haoze, I'm looking for you. There's something. Lu Haoze immediately guessed that Yun Jian was looking for him because he blurted out that Yun Jian knew hypnotism last time. However, he became even more shy. The redness on his face was unavoidable. It had to be said that Lu Haoze was very shy. Yun Jian felt that Lu Haoze was acting like this. Not only did she not despise him for blushing like a little girl, but she also felt that he was a little cute. This Lu Haoze was very similar to her little brother when she first met him in her previous life. Especially when he first met a stranger, his face was pink and tender. Yun Jian couldn't help but feel sad when she thought of her little brother. Oh, Lu Haoze had just nodded when a boy next to him pushed Lu Haoze in front of Yun Jian. Kid, go. Your luck with women is here. These words made Lu Haoze blush even more. Yun Jian didn't care. Besides, there was nothing between them. It was normal for puberty students to be entangled in the love between men and women. If a girl went to look for a boy, or a boy went to look for a girl, it would be seen as an unusual relationship. Although Yun Jian was only 16 years old in her previous life, her mind was not as young as it was now. This was a feeling that only those who had lingered on the edge of life and death would deeply understand. In the end, Lu Haoze followed Yun Jian to an empty corner.
Yun Jian looked at Lu Haoze, who lowered his head shyly, and asked him directly, "You should know why I'm looking for you." Although Lu Haoze was a little shy, he was a smart child. He nodded and said, "Do you want to know how I can tell that you know hypnotism?" Lu Haoze spoke cautiously, but it had to be said that this child was very smart. Yun Jian nodded. She curled her lips and revealed a charming smile. "That's right. So you can choose to tell me directly, or you can choose not to tell me. But even if you don't tell me, I will know." Other than the secret of the sandalwood box, there was nothing that she couldn't find out. Lu Haoze's slender fingers rubbed against each other for a long time. Finally, he gathered his courage and looked at Yun Jian. "I choose to tell you that I also know hypnotism. This is a technique that has been passed down in my family for generations. We have never told outsiders. I saw that you also used hypnotism that day, so I couldn't control myself and shouted. Because the hypnotism that you use seems to be very powerful. Even the most powerful elder in my family can't compare to 1/10 of you." Chapter 195. For some reason, when Yun Jian heard Lu Haoze say that his family elder's old friend used the same hypnotism technique as her, she suddenly thought of the old man who taught her these skills in her previous life. She actually didn't know what that old man was called, where he came from, or where he was now. This matter had actually happened many years ago. When she met the old man in her previous life, she was only 10 years old. She unintentionally saved his life when she was 10 years old. In the next 2 years, the old man taught Yun Jian everything he had learned throughout his life. However, he disappeared without a trace. But in Yun Jian's heart, this old man was like her life's enlightenment mentor. Perhaps without this old man, she wouldn't have achieved what she had in her previous life. "Do you know where your elder's old friend is now?" Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. Although her tone was as calm as usual, her heart was already in turmoil. She suspected that the old man was Lu Haoze's family elder's old friend. Lu Haoze slowly spoke under Yun Jian's expectant gaze. In the end, he only shook his head apologetically and lowered his head. "I don't know." The sparkle in Yun Jian's eyes dimmed as well. In her previous life, she used her power to find the old man, but it was as if the old man had never appeared in this world. He completely disappeared without a trace. But our family's elders might know something. Lu Haoze's next words reignited Yun Jian's hope. "Really?" Yun Jian stared at Lu Haoze's young face and asked. Lu Haoze's face turned red again. He said evasively, Really? If you want to know, I can take you to see the elder of my family. However, he has gone to the countryside and won't be back for a while. When he comes back, I'll ask you to go find him." "Okay, it's a deal." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Then, she loosened her eyebrows and looked at Lu Haoze with a faint smile. She continued, "Then let me formally introduce myself. I'm Yun Jian, a student of Longmen First Middle School's Grade 3 Class A. When your elder comes back, you can come to our school directly to find me." Lu Haoze nodded his head again, agreeing to it. What a shy child. Yun Jian touched her chin and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Although Lu Haoze was older than Yun Jian treated him as a younger brother. A period of time, Yun Jian rested at home for a few days. She received news that Zhang Jifan's arrangement of the shop's renovation was coming to an end. This was much faster than planned. Once the shop's arrangements were completed, Yun Jian planned to officially start importing cars for sale. For the next few days, whenever there was a break, Yun Jian would strengthen her training in the military training camp. Since she had some free time this weekend, Yun Jian planned to accompany Qin Yiru to buy some winter clothes or cotton shoes for her. Qin Yiru's clothes were old and worn out. Who knew how many years these clothes had been worn? Even the color of the clothes had faded. Yun Jian claimed that she went out to do some temporary work when she was free. She said that she wanted to experience life better. Claiming that she had received her salary, she dragged Chin Yiru to a clothing store that was rather expensive but had nice and high-quality clothes to pick out some clothes. Chapter 196. Chin Yiru was comforted but melancholy at the same time. She blamed herself for not being able to give her son and daughter a decent life. In spite of it, seeing how filial her son and daughter were now, she could close her eyes in peace even if she were to die right now. Xiao Jian, I appreciate your kindness. I still have clothes to wear now. Keep the money for yourself. Chin Yiru pushed and shoved Yun Jian but was eventually dragged into the clothing store. Mom, I earned this money. I can spend it however I want. Now that I'm buying clothes for you, you have to accept it even if you don't want to. Yun Jian pressed her lips into a smile and pulled Chin Yiru into the store. Yun Jian looked more like an ordinary, well-behaved girl who only knew how to be filial to her elders. Chin Yiru felt warm inside when she heard Yun Jian's words. Then I'll buy one piece of clothing. Just one piece, no more. Chin Yiru finally relented, afraid that Yun Jian would buy more clothes for her, so she spoke first. The interior of the clothing store was quite beautiful, but it was because of the store's decorations that people would think that the items in the store were not cheap. That was why Chin Yiru emphasized that she would only buy one piece of clothing. Just one set. One piece of clothing, a pair of pants, and a pair of shoes. I want you to wear the entire set of clothes I bought. That's the only way. Yun Jian snuggled up to Chin Yiru and shook her hand as she spoke coquettishly with a grin. You child. Chin Yiru tapped Yun Jian's forehead. There was indescribable affection in her tone, but she still acquiesced in comfort. Yun Jian would only show her childish side in front of Chin Yiru. Hello, how can I help you? The store's attendant was a polite person. When she saw Yun Jian and Chin Yiru walk in, she did not mind that Yun Jian and Chin Yiru were dressed plainly and went over to greet them politely. Mom, see if there's anything you like. Yun Jian turned to Chin Yiru. Chin Yiru nodded and did not reject her daughter's kindness, choosing a few pieces of clothing that she liked to try on. In the end, she decided to buy the cheapest piece of clothing in the pile. Yun Jian did not say much. She paid and left after the attendant sent her off respectfully. Then, Yun Jian bought a pair of pants and a pair of shoes for Chin Yiru from another store. Mom, I'll carry the bags, Yun Jian said and snatched the 3 bags. Chin Yiru was even more gratified when she saw this. Yun Jian and Chin Yiru were about to leave the mall and walk out. This was a shopping mall. The mall was divided into many levels and sold different things on each level. It could be said that it had everything. At this moment, Yun Jian and Chin Yiru were walking down the stairs on the 2nd floor. Ah! Murder! Murder! At this moment, there was a sudden scream from the entrance. Because there was a lot of people in the mall, it was difficult to turn around and walk away, let alone run away. At this moment, there was a sudden scream from the crowd. Many people did not see the situation at the entrance clearly and began to panic. Yun Jian and Chin Yiru could see 3 or 4 masked men in black rushing in from where they were standing. These men each had a watermelon knife in their hands. They stabbed and slashed at anyone they saw. These criminals seemed to have appeared suddenly and at the same time, they caught everyone off guard. A few unlucky people did not even have time to react before they were stabbed in the vital parts by these criminals who suddenly rushed into the mall to kill people. They fell to the ground on the spot. Ah! 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 In an instant, the screams and shouts, as well as the sounds of people jostling and running away, filled the entire mall. By the time Chin Yiru reacted, one of the criminals with a watermelon knife was already rushing towards Yun Jian and Chin Yiru. Chin Yiru understood the severity of this sudden situation. She was so scared that her face turned pale. Chapter 197. Out of motherly instinct, the first thing that came to Chin Yiru's mind when she was caught in such a dangerous situation was not that Yun Jian's unusual skills could save her.
It was that she wanted to save her daughter. Therefore, she instinctively pushed Yunjian away while she stood where she was. Even if she had to die, she had to buy time for her daughter to escape. The scene was already in a state of panic. Everyone was running away like headless flies. No one dared to stand up and fight with the criminals. Yunjian's docile gaze shifted abruptly as malice exploded in her eyes. Seeing that the criminal was about to stab Qin Yiru, who was closest to him, with a long watermelon knife, Yunjian pulled Qin Yiru behind her without a second thought. Qin Yiru shrieked when she saw it. Xiao Jian, no. She thought that Yunjian was going to take the knife for her. Qin Yiru's shriek was soon drowned out by the chaotic screams. No one around them noticed the commotion as they were busy running for their lives. Realizing that the criminals were going on a killing spree, the crowd was eager to push everyone around them away to block the criminals so that they could have time to escape. Clang! Before Qin Yiru could snap out of her wails, Yunjian had already kicked away the watermelon knife in the criminal's hand. Ah! Ah! Help! Help! Sob. A well-dressed woman who ran past Qin Yiru shrieked and grabbed Qin Yiru, pushing her toward the criminal who was slashing at her. The criminals killed everyone they saw, stabbing and slashing anyone who was in front of them. Seeing that she was about to be caught by the criminals, the woman pushed Qin Yiru away in fear so that she had time to escape. You're asking for it. When the woman pushed Qin Yiru toward another criminal who was chasing her, Yunjian had just kicked away the watermelon knife in the criminal's hand. With a low growl, rage engulfed her. Ah! 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 Seeing that the knife in the criminal's hand was about to plunge into Qin Yiru's heart, the woman squeezed her way to the back of the crowd and ran away, looking terrified. Qin Yiru was shielded behind Yunjian and pulled out by the woman. She felt like her heart was in her throat. Part of it was because he was worried that Yunjian had just defended him from the robber. Another reason was that the other robber's blade was already inches away from him. She could even feel the arrival of the Grim Reaper. However, in the next second, Yunjian dashed over. She pulled Qin Yiru away and blocked the knife for Qin Yiru with her hand. Qin Yiru was suddenly pulled away by the woman to block the knife. Yunjian did not react in time, and it was too late for her to react. Therefore, she used her fastest speed to pull Qin Yiru away again. In order to prevent Qin Yiru from getting hurt, she used her own hand to block the knife. In addition, the criminal's watermelon knife had already cut Yunjian's arm. In an instant, fresh blood spurted out. Yunjian's eyes instantly darkened. She was not a god. In her previous life, she had killed all her enemies, but she herself was also covered in blood. She had not experienced this kind of hurt in a long time. The feeling of her skin being cut open and her flesh being torn apart reminded her of the feeling of killing. You want to kill my mother? I'll take your lives. A murderous aura erupted from Yunjian's body. The blood that flowed from her arm dripped onto the ground, but she did not even look at it. She looked at the group of criminals with a murderous aura. At this moment, even the criminals who had killed until they were numb to it were all stunned. When the surrounding people who had run far away came back to their senses, they could see a young girl with blood flowing from her arm looking at the group of criminals with a murderous expression. Was she not afraid of this group of murderous criminals? Chapter 198. Xiao Jian. When Qin Yiru saw the blood flowing down Yunjian's arm, she ran over in a panic, wanting to grab Yunjian's arm to stop the bleeding. Yunjian stopped her, shielding Qin Yiru behind her silently as she looked at the criminals who were all looking at her with watermelon knives in their hands. Those who were almost killed, but Yunjian's situation had attracted the criminals' attention. All of them took the chance to escape madly. Within seconds, there was no one left on the first floor. Except for the first few people who were killed on the ground and whose life or death situation was unknown. Since the mall only allowed entry and exit, meaning that there was only one entrance, the second, third, and fourth floors of the mall were crowded with people. It was not that these people were unwilling to leave. On the contrary, no one was willing to stay and watch the gory scene. In spite of it, none of them could escape. The only exit of the mall was now guarded by a group of murderous criminals. They could only squeeze upstairs with all their might, hoping to survive until the end and wait for the police to send someone to rescue them. Everyone was afraid that they would be caught and hacked to death by the criminals. Everyone was fearful in the face of death. From where they were trapped, they could see Yunjian's fair and tender arm clearly. Blood dripped onto the floor from the knife wound, connecting with the ghastly pool of blood on the ground. The girl, however, did not seem to feel any pain as she allowed the blood to flow from her arm. It was a sight that sent chills down one's spine. A group of 4 masked criminals in black made a few hand gestures and went for Yunjian with watermelon knives. It was obvious that this was a premeditated massacre. It was the peak hour of the mall, so there were many people walking around, to the point that it was crowded. The criminals had chosen to massacre people here because there were so many people here. 1 slash and 1 slash was enough to kill someone. The people here were all civilians. Even if someone was stabbed to death, no one dared to stop it because everyone was afraid that they would be killed. This fueled the criminals' desire to kill even more. Now, Yunjian had appeared out of nowhere. She had kicked one of the criminals' watermelon knives away and pulled Qin Yiru to avoid another one stab. Judging by her skills just now, she was definitely not an ordinary person. Hence, the criminals went for Yunjian. They didn't know that they were slashing the blade of the Grim Reaper. There was no return. Slap. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. Keeping Qin Yiru within her protective range, she extended her leg and stomped the handle of the watermelon knife that had fallen to the ground from the thug she had just kicked away. The watermelon knife bounced off the ground due to the rebound force. Yunjian reached out and caught the watermelon knife without even bending over. Xiao Jian. Xiao Jian. Qin Yiru called out in panic, as if realizing what Yunjian was about to do. Splat. With the sound of a knife stabbing into flesh, the criminal closest to Yunjian was stabbed to death by Yunjian in the next second. Yunjian, who had stabbed the criminal to death, did not panic like everyone had expected. On the contrary, she was calm as if she had just killed an ant. The other 3 criminals narrowed their eyes, but they still stabbed at Yunjian with their watermelon knives. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 sounds were heard, but the 3 criminals had yet to react. Yunjian did not even move from her spot. The 3 criminals collapsed on the spot as their throats were slit by the watermelon knives that Yunjian had flung out. Murder. This young lady had killed someone. She was so skilled. It was as if she had practiced it countless times. In spite of it, the people who witnessed the scene were not as frightened as they had expected. Instead, they breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 199. In such a critical moment, no one dared to go against the criminals who were wielding watermelon knives. Everyone was thinking that it would be best for them to avoid the situation, but none of them considered that the criminals were not skilled in martial arts. Even if they were trained, there were only 4 of them. There were at least thousands of people who were running for their lives in the mall, if not tens of thousands. Among the thousands of people, there were plenty of men in the prime of their lives. However, no one dared to stand up against the criminals who were slaughtering innocent people. Human nature was the most fundamental manifestation of human nature in times of crisis. In the end, the one who stood up to save everyone was this underage girl who looked like she was not even 18 yet. While everyone breathed a sigh of relief, they could not help gawking at Yunjian. Xiao Jian, you. Qin Yiru was stupefied by Yunjian's murder just now. Her daughter who had always been sensible and obedient, had actually killed someone. Her Xiao Jian had actually killed someone. Killing people is against the law. Mom. Yunjian took a step closer to Qin Yiru and held Qin Yiru's trembling hand. Mom, if I didn't kill them just now, we'd be the ones who died. Qin Yiru looked at Yunjian as she shuddered. She opened her mouth, filled with doubts about Yun Jian's behavior just now, but she could not get anything out of her. Yun Jian was right. Moreover, from a legal point of view, if one killed the other party when one's life was threatened, it was considered self-defense and would not be punished. Xiao Jian, your hand is still bleeding. I'll take you to the hospital. Let's go to the hospital and get it bandaged. Qin Yiru suddenly felt something wet on the back of her hand. Looking down, she saw that the blood on Yun Jian's arm was gushing down even more violently. She panicked, forgetting about what Yun Jian had done just now as she pulled Yun Jian out. Mom, hold on. A sharp glint flashed across Yun Jian's pretty eyes as she patted the back of Qin Yiru's hand to comfort her. Qin Yiru was indeed stupefied. She had never encountered such a situation in her life. Yun Jian, on the other hand, simply tore a corner of her shirt into a rectangular bandage and bit on the makeshift bandage made from the fabric, wrapping the bandage around the wound on her arm out of habit under everyone's gaze. The wound was not deep for Yun Jian, but the cut was deep enough to see the flesh and bone. Yun Jian took it without even blinking. The others were surprised as well. Such a deep wound, not to mention a little girl like her, even if it were an adult, who would be able to bandage their own wounds so habitually like her? Judging from the speed of his bandaging, it seemed like he had practiced it very well. How old was she? Just as everyone was thinking about this, Yun Jian had finished bandaging her wound. She lifted her leg and walked up the stairs leading to the first floor and the second floor. The group of people on the second, third, and fourth floors were more or less afraid when they saw Yun Jian, who had just killed the gangster, walking up the stairs. As a result, when Yun Jian walked over, the group of people automatically squeezed to the side to make way for Yun Jian. In the end, Yun Jian came to a corner and pulled out a woman in luxurious clothes. You, what are you doing? The woman looked at Yun Jian in fear. The moment she saw Yun Jian, she thought of Yun Jian's expression when she killed the gangster. Her heart trembled with fear. This woman was the culprit who pulled Qin Yiru and used her as a meat cushion when they were escaping and caused Yun Jian's injury. I'm not planning to do anything. Yun Jian looked at the woman with a smile. She smiled strangely, and in the next second, a fiery slap landed on the woman's face, making a loud noise in this place where no one dared to make noise. Chapter 200. Ah! The woman screamed. She was wearing a designer coat and carrying a Chanel bag. It was obvious that she was from a wealthy family. At this moment, she was slapped by Yun Jian. Yun Jian's slap was not light. After the woman was slapped, she coughed violently. Something seemed to have fallen from her gums. The woman covered her mouth and coughed desperately. It was a white tooth. This woman's tooth was broken by Yun Jian. But seeing Yun Jian do this, the people present did not even dare to fart. This little girl had just killed someone. She had killed someone. Who would dare to interfere in this matter? My tooth. When the woman saw that it was her white tooth that was exposed in her hand, she felt dizzy and almost screamed and fainted. The woman raised her eyes and glared at Yun Jian fiercely. Then, she insulted her. Who do you think you are? Do you know who I am? How dare you hit me? Although the woman was afraid that Yun Jian had just killed a few criminals, they were still criminals. They were criminals after all. If Yun Jian did not kill them, they would kill more innocent people. The woman really did not believe that Yun Jian would dare to kill her. Did she dare? Did she dare? Yun Jian ignored the woman's evil words. She looked at the woman in disgust and said to her, "This slap is for my mother." As she spoke, Yun Jian stood where she was and swung her hand to slap the woman's heavily made-up face again. Pfft! This slap was so strong that the woman, who did not react in time, spat out a few white teeth from her mouth. Yun Jian's skills had improved by leaps and bounds because of the military training. Even her strength could not be compared to before. This slap was almost enough to knock out all the teeth in the woman's mouth.
However, Yun Jian knew that this was the woman's own fault. She should not have used her mother as a shield. She did not care about herself, but if something had really happened to Qin Yiru just now, or if she could not save her in time, Yun Jian could not even begin to imagine the feeling of death that pierced her heart. I'm warning you with this slap. The next time I see you, you're dead. Yun Jian spat out this sentence fiercely. At this moment, the woman's whole body trembled. She was originally very aggressive, but at this moment, she didn't even dare to let out a fart. She had a feeling that if she said another word in front of Yun Jian, this little girl would really kill her. Just like how she had killed those criminals just now. After giving the woman 2 slaps, Yun Jian went down from the 2nd floor. At this moment, a group of uniformed policemen and a group of armed special forces soldiers rushed in from the door. There were also ambulances rushing to the scene and immediately started to treat the casualties at the scene, as well as the people who were still alive. Among this group of special forces, Yun Jian actually saw a familiar face. That was Gu Junjian. Gu Junjian and the others had received a notice that there were criminals brutally killing civilians here, so they hurried over. They had received orders from their superiors to immediately kill those criminals on the spot. However, they did not expect to see all the criminals dead the moment they entered the door. Unexpectedly, they also found Yun Jian here. Yun Jian and Gu Junjian exchanged glances. At this moment, a fat police officer holding a notebook and a pen walked in front of Yun Jian and asked her, "What happened just now? Who killed these criminals?" The woman was still afraid of Yun Jian and did not dare to say a word. Now that the policeman had appeared, she was confident again. She was no longer afraid of Yun Jian and seemed to have forgotten Yun Jian's warning. Chapter 201. The woman's words caused all the police officers, medical staff, and special forces soldiers to look at Yun Jian in shock. Other than Gu Junjian, everyone who had just arrived was completely shocked. If it was said that these murderous gangsters were slashing at the crowd with knives, they were killed by a group of men at the scene. Even so, the group of professionals at the scene would still be shocked. After all, these criminals were holding watermelon knives in their hands. If an ordinary person fought against them with their bare hands, it would be very easy for them to be stabbed. It could even threaten their life at any time. However, what appeared in front of everyone's eyes was that other than the people who had collapsed on the ground floor, there was only Yun Jian and Qin Yiru left in the lobby. There was also the group of 4 criminals. The criminals were all dead. Coincidentally, the cloth that was temporarily used as a bandage on Yun Jian's arm was stained with bright red blood. It was obvious that she had just fought with the criminals. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. In addition, there was a group of people standing on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor of the shopping mall. They were all trembling with fear. These criminals were really killed by this young girl who was not even 18 years old yet. In contrast to the group of people who were shocked, Gu Junjian was very calm. He even secretly cursed in his heart. This Yun Jian was someone he had his eyes on. She was a special forces candidate that he had personally selected. She was the person who had killed the international top 10 assassin, Wolf Blade. Weren't these criminals looking for their own deaths when they encountered her? She killed someone. She killed someone. She even broke my teeth just now. You're the police, hurry up and arrest her. Put her in jail, put her in jail. The woman upstairs pointed at Yun Jian as if she had gone crazy and screamed loudly. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She turned her head slightly and glanced at the woman with her sharp and vicious eyes. After the woman who was still screaming crazily received Yun Jian's murderous gaze, her horrified voice immediately softened. Then, she shut her mouth and covered her broken teeth at the same time. Yun Jian's gaze made her feel that if she said another word, Yun Jian would dare to kill her even in front of the police. She was a demon. The woman shuddered in her heart. Cough cough. The fat police officer raised the black pen in his hand and ordered Yun Jian, "Little girl, it seems that you need to come with us." Xiao Jian.
Qin Yiru grabbed Yun Jian quickly and looked at the officer pleadingly. "Officer, can you let my daughter go to the hospital to treat her wound first?" Qin Yiru knew that they had to make a trip to the police station now that something like this had happened. Not only them, but all the witnesses present had to make a statement. However, Yun Jian's wound was only bandaged with a simple cloth. She was only worried that her daughter's wound would become infected or continue to bleed. The fat police officer hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. "All right, follow the medical staff to the hospital first." Qin Yiru thanked him gratefully. "Thank you, officer." "Thank you." "All right, go quickly." The fat police officer waved his hand for Qin Yiru to bring Yun Jian to the hospital first when he saw more blood stains on the cloth bandaged around Yun Jian's arm. It was undeniable that the fat police officer was a kind-hearted person. After all, if Yun Jian and Qin Yiru escaped or did not go to the police station, he would have to bear the responsibility. Yun Jian, who came out of the hospital, had a new bandage on her arm and various ointments applied to it. Qin Yiru breathed a sigh of relief before they made their way to the police station. There were already a lot of people standing at the entrance of the police station. They were all witnesses of the crime scene. All of them still had lingering fears as they trembled when they made their statements in the police station. It was obvious that they had yet to recover from the shock. Chapter 202. When Ge Junjian saw Yun Jian walking over with Qin Yiru, he glanced at the wound on her hand and asked, "Is your injury okay?" He had obviously heard from the other witnesses that Yun Jian was injured because she was trying to save Qin Yiru. Otherwise, with Yun Jian's skills, she would not have been injured at all. However, in that situation, Yun Jian was able to save Qin Yiru from a knife that was inches away from her. Her skills were definitely top-notch. Just by listening to the witnesses, Ge Junjian knew that if he had been in Yun Jian's shoes, even if he had used his own life to save Qin Yiru's life, or to push Qin Yiru away, he would not have been able to do so. Yun Jian was indeed the person who had killed Wolf Blade, who was ranked 10th on the assassin ranking. "It's okay," Yun Jian smiled lightly and introduced Qin Yiru to Ge Junjian. "This is my mother." "Oh." Ge Junjian looked at Qin Yiru curiously after hearing that. He saw that there was still a trace of lingering fear on her tired face. He just wanted to see who this woman was who could give birth to such an amazing daughter like Yun Jian. "Mother, this is the captain of the military special forces." Yun Jian did not plan to hide anything as she pointed at Ge Junjian and immediately introduced him. She just did not point out that Ge Junjian was the captain of the advanced special forces. Advanced Special Forces soldiers were different from ordinary Special Forces soldiers. The Advanced Special Forces that Ge Junjian was in was not only a team that directly belonged to the country, but more importantly, those who could enter the Advanced Special Forces were definitely influential figures in the country. Ge Junjian was the captain of such a powerful team. Even so, in Qin Yiru's eyes, Ge Junjian was already a big shot. Qin Yiru was puzzled as to why her daughter knew such a big shot. She couldn't help but greet Ge Junjian politely, "Nice to meet you." Since it was someone her daughter knew, she could not refute Xiao Jian. Ge Junjian nodded. He also looked at Qin Yiru in a friendly manner and revealed a meaningful smile. "Yes, nice to meet you. Your daughter is very outstanding." Ge Junjian sighed from the bottom of his heart. Qin Yiru was also stunned. "You're here? It's your turn to give your statements. Come in." At this moment, the fat police officer saw that Yun Jian and Qin Yiru had returned, so he walked over to greet them. As a result, their conversation ended abruptly, and Yun Jian and Qin Yiru entered the police station. Ge Junjian followed them in as well. Ge Junjian was the captain of the Advanced Special Forces. His position was high, so he could enter and leave the police station freely. The process of recording Yun Jian's statement was much more complicated than the other witnesses. After all, it was a fact that Yun Jian had killed someone. It was unknown what Ge Junjian had told the police officers, but Yun Jian left the station after giving her statement. She did not even have to deal with the tedious matters. Qin Yiru, who left the police station, was even more confused. She asked the same question she had just now, Xiao Jian, how do you know such a big shot like the Special Forces officer? Actually, Qin Yiru had many questions she wanted to ask. Why did her daughter change so much? Mom, actually, I've joined the Special Forces. I'm already a candidate for the Special Forces. Yun Jian blinked and suddenly confessed, and they walked past a deserted area with no one around. Chapter 203. What? Xiao Jian, you've joined the Special Forces. Qin Yiru clutched her chest, stunned by the sudden news. Her eyes were trained on Yun Jian as she exclaimed in a raised pitch. Since Yun Jian had decided to come clean, there was no need for her to hide the truth anymore. She held Qin Yiru's hands and told her gently, Mom, it's my own choice to join the Special Forces. Yun Jian's words had almost cleared up all of Qin Yiru's doubts. It even made Qin Yiru think that Yun Jian's sudden improvement in skills was due to her joining the Special Forces and training. Even Yun Jian's swift killing of the thugs just now was the result of her training in the Special Forces. Qin Yiru felt like she had found the source of all her doubts, but at the same time, she could not accept it all of a sudden. Yun Jian stood where she was, waiting for Qin Yiru to digest the truth. After a long time, Qin Yiru held Yun Jian's hands. She did not know how she should feel toward Yun Jian right now. Qin Yiru only felt that she was a failure as a mother. As a mother, she did not even know what her daughter had been doing recently. In spite of it, Qin Yiru still held Yun Jian's hands and told her in detail, Xiao Jian, I don't object to you staying in the Special Forces, but you have to promise that nothing will happen to you. I know that it's dangerous, but you're not allowed to be in danger. Promise me and I won't stop you. Qin Yiru was not like some mothers who treated their children like treasure. She loved her child, but she respected her choice as well. Of course, this was on the premise that her child's life was guaranteed. Yun Jian knew that being a Special Forces soldier was dangerous at all times, but she nodded at Qin Yiru. Mom, I promise I'll be fine. Being a Special Forces soldier was dangerous, but it paled in comparison to the various organizations she had to come into contact with in her past life. What was certain, however, was that she would return to her previous life's environment one day. Of course, the person who wanted her, slaying God, dead was not born yet. Amen. Qin Yiru leaned toward Yun Jian and rested her head softly beside Yun Jian's before caressing Yun Jian's forehead. To Qin Yiru, no matter how mature her Xiao Jian was, she was still a child. After returning to school, Yun Jian had a few days of peace. It was just that there was a rumor in school recently that caused a commotion in the entire Longmen city. A talkative and lively boy in class bragged to the class after class as if he was there himself. My aunt was there when the criminals massacred the people in Northgate Mall. Wow, are you for real? I heard that a bunch of criminals charged in that day and hacked people with watermelon knives. Another student chimed in immediately. The incident caused an uproar in Longmen City as the students in school were discussing it as well. Of course it's true. My aunt said that she was standing on the 3rd floor at that time. She thought that she was done for, but guess what? In the end, they were all killed by a 15-year-old girl. F***ck, the girl's that strong? Someone else chimed in when the boy bragged just now. Yun Jian, the main character of the conversation who had just returned from the washroom, happened to pass by the students who were talking enthusiastically. Hey, Xiao Jian, I remember that you went to Northgate Mall to buy clothes with your mom that day too, right? Chen Sini was engrossed in the boy's story. She suddenly recalled that Yun Jian had told her that Yun Jian had accompanied her mother to Northgate Mall to buy clothes, so she mentioned it. Chapter 204. Hey, if that's the case, Yun Jian, you were there when the incident happened that day? One of the students couldn't hide his excitement and hurriedly asked Yun Jian. Everyone in the class wanted to know the answer to this question. Although the boy who was bragging just now said that his aunt was there, that was what he heard from his aunt. He didn't see it with his own eyes. If Yun Jian was really there at that time, then she must know the whole story clearly. In fact, Chen Sini also wanted to know what happened at the mall. However, she inadvertently made Yun Jian the center of attention in the class. She winked at Yun Jian apologetically. Yun Jian was in a good mood at the moment. She smiled back at Chen Sini and then looked into the pairs of expectant eyes in the class. She nodded and said, "That's right, I was there." "Then hurry up and tell us. What happened that day? Could it be that those criminals really died in the hands of a 15-year-old girl?" The student who couldn't hide his excitement asked Yun Jian again, his eyes shining with fascination. Yun Jian only smiled slightly. She pursed her lips and looked at the group of students who were especially curious about what happened that day. She raised her eyebrows and said, "If I said that I killed those criminals, would you believe me?" "What?" Hearing Yun Jian's words, everyone present turned pale with fright. She was the one who killed the criminals in the legends? Opening their eyes again, Yun Jian was indeed 15 or 16 years old. The girl who killed the criminals in the rumors was also around this age. Could it be that she really killed those criminals? Just kidding. In the next second, Yun Jian dissolved the tense atmosphere at the scene. Yun Jian's half-true and half-false words made the students present relax. However, if she really killed someone, how could she come back to school so quickly? Even if she didn't, she would be locked up by the police for a few days. The group of students immediately dispersed noisily. Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng, on the other hand, ran over to surround Yun Jian after the group left. Jian, you must have killed those criminals, right?" Chen Sini went to Yun Jian and asked softly. Zhang Xiaofeng, on the other hand, looked at Yun Jian with admiration. Yun Jian nodded subtly and looked at Zhang Xiaofeng, asking, "Did you train when I wasn't here?" "Yes. Of course, master, I've been training very hard." Zhang Xiaofeng, who was called out, put away his deep admiration for Yun Jian and flexed his muscles, gesturing at Yun Jian in a funny way. Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Sini were slowly getting used to Yun Jian's unbelievable performance. After all, the two of them had witnessed enough of the things that had happened before. "So, master, when are you going to teach me something better?" Zhang Xiaofeng gestured again and went up to her with a grin. "We'll talk about it after you've mastered the chopstick throwing." Yun Jian pressed her lips together slightly and smiled subtly. Chopstick throwing was a skill she had Zhang Xiaofeng practice. It was actually very simple. He placed an empty beer bottle on the ground and got Zhang Xiaofeng to toss the empty beer bottles in the distance with his chopsticks. Toss one beer bottle after another would count. The movement sounded simple, but when Zhang Xiaofeng practiced it more and could easily throw the chopsticks into empty beer bottles far away, his basic skill would be more or less there. Although the movement sounded simple, many moves were closely related to it. Especially when it came to firearms, aiming was the most important point. Just like chopstick throwing, one throw and one go-in would be accurate, while a gun required one to aim and shoot. Chapter 205. Oh. Zhang Xiaofeng was disappointed when he heard that he had to practice throwing chopsticks again. However, he understood that the basics were not something that could be learned overnight. Hence, he started thinking about how to improve the accuracy of his chopstick throwing. Chen Sini made a funny face in the direction where Zhang Xiaofeng was walking. Then, she turned around and looked at Yun Jian with a smile. She stuck out her tongue and looked extremely cute. Coincidentally, the bell rang to signal the start of class. Thus, the group of students who had gathered together to gossip about various trivial matters returned to their seats. The teacher quickly carried a stack of textbooks into the classroom. Yun Jian lived a comfortable life again. Now that Qin Yiru knew that she was training at the military training camp, she could go to the camp openly on the weekends. At this moment, it was not long before her first mission in a month. Today, Yun Jian was sweating profusely from the high-difficulty training. After returning from the military training camp with Chu Ning and the rest, they agreed to go to a high-class clubhouse to party for a while. However, they were stopped by a high-class sports car. Seeing the person in the car, Yun Jian frowned deeply. Him? Yun Jian knew the person in the car. She had met him once after her rebirth. This person was one of the 4 leaders of the Enhan organization, Shuang. Shuang was Siyi's subordinate. Logically speaking, Shuang should not know her since she had been reborn. However, he actually came all the way from country M to country Z to look for her. What did this mean? Who are you? Can you move the car? You're blocking our way. Chu Ning said when she saw Shuang suddenly driving a sports car in the middle of the road. It was normal for her to say this. After all, this was a pedestrian area. Shuang deliberately drove the car here to block their way. Of course, Chu Ning did not know that Yun Jian knew Shuang. Hence, she said this. I'm looking for her. Shuang frowned slightly. His slender finger pointed in the direction of Yun Jian, and an innate murderous aura shocked everyone present. The 4 leaders of the Enhan organization were all handsome and dashing, and they were all quite young. This was what Yun Jian knew. I know him. Yun Jian remained silent for 2 seconds before speaking to Chu Ning and the others. Why don't you guys leave first? I won't be going to the party. Yun Jian knew that Shuang wouldn't come looking for her for no reason. Furthermore, it had been a long time since Ce went to the ancient tomb, and there was still no news of her. Hence, she spoke to Chu Ning and the others. You're not going? Chu Ning muttered, then pursed her lips and said, all right. Yun Jian nodded and got into Shuaying's sports car. Shuaying drove the sports car into the distance. Finally, it stopped at a quiet and deserted place. Did something happen to him? Yun Jian didn't wait for Shuaying to speak and asked hurriedly. She didn't even notice the nervousness in her voice. Shuaying frowned and nodded at Yun Jian. Then, he said, young master entered the ancient tomb in the south with Adam and Imo's senator not long after. We lost contact with him. Our communication device was cut off. We can't contact him. Shuang sounded serious and nervous when he said this. How long has he been in the ancient tomb? Yun Jian didn't care why Shuang came looking for her after Ce went missing. She asked hurriedly. About 10 days. They prepared food when they went in. But if they don't come out after a long time, I'm afraid. Shuang didn't continue. However, even Shuang, one of the 4 leaders of an Han organization, was so serious. Yun Jian knew that this matter was serious. The sandalwood box and the ancient tomb in the south. What secrets did it hold? She gritted her teeth, paused, and said to Shuang, I'll go back and prepare. Do you want to go to the ancient tomb with me? Chapter 206. Shuang frowned. He looked at Yun Jian and said, I have to stay in the organization. Ce had told him before that even if something happened to him, Shuang had to stay in the organization in case someone took advantage of the situation. Actually, Shuang did not come to Yun Jian because of Ce's instructions. He knew that Ce had no intention of hiding anything from Yun Jian. A woman that could catch the eye of his young master would naturally not be an ordinary person. That was why Shuang came to Yun Jian to ask for help. And obviously, Yun Jian did not disappoint Shuang. At this moment, Shuang suddenly felt that Yun Jian and his young master were a perfect match. Okay. Yun Jian nodded. Yun Jian naturally knew what Shuang meant. He had to stay in the Enhan organization because the Enhan organization was similar to the Kosha mercenaries. Once all the leaders were not in the organization, those who were hiding in the dark would take action at any time. Yun Jian did not expect herself to go to the southern country so suddenly. But when she heard that something had happened to Ce, she could not sit still. A muffled voice in her heart told her that she had to find him. If he was alive, she had to see him. If he was dead, she had to see his corpse. When Yun Jian came back to her senses, she had already driven her Ferrari sports car to Country A. Country A, which was the southern country, was the location of the ancient tomb where the sandalwood box was excavated. As for the few days that she disappeared, she asked Gu Junjian to lie to Qin Yiru on her behalf. She lied that the army wanted to train the group of special forces candidates better and that they would undergo long-term close training. Even the school had reported it. Yun Jian took the detailed map that she got from Shuang and drove her car at the speed of light. She did not drive to Country Z. Instead, she parked her car at the provincial airport and bought a ticket to Country A. It was already 4:00 in the afternoon when the ancient tomb of the sandalwood box was excavated in Country A, which was a relatively poor country. She rushed to the ancient tomb without stopping. The ancient tomb was located in a deep ravine. When Yun Jian arrived, she could see many tents set up around it. Yun Jian carried a lot of things she had prepared in advance and was about to enter the tomb. "Little girl, wait." Suddenly, a deep voice stopped Yun Jian in her tracks. Yun Jian turned around to look. He saw a solemn middle-aged man standing in front of him. This man held a lot of archaeological equipment in his hands and wore a pair of glasses on the bridge of his nose. Looking at the group of people standing behind the middle-aged man, as well as their attire and appearance, there was no doubt that they were an archaeological team. Chapter 207. The Flying Dragon archaeological team enjoyed a great reputation in Country Z. Even some people who weren't in the circle knew about them. Yu Bufan and the group of people behind him were the members of the mysterious Flying Dragon archaeological team. Although Yun Jian wasn't in the circle, she had heard about the Flying Dragon archaeological team. She nodded at Yu Bufan and said, "That's right, I want to enter the tomb." When Yun Jian said this, not only Yu Bufan, but also the group of teammates behind him gasped. Did this little girl not know about the situation here or what? She actually said that she wanted to enter the tomb in such a relaxed tone. Didn't she know about the rumor of only entering and not leaving in the ancient tomb? Little girl, are you alone?" Yu Bufan swallowed his saliva and asked. Actually, when Yu Bufan saw Yun Jian carrying a bulging backpack just now, he casually guessed that she wanted to enter the tomb. He didn't expect her to really enter the tomb. And she was alone? "My name is Yun Jian. I'm alone." Yun Jian wasn't in a hurry to leave as she said this to Yu Bufan. It was her first time here, so she could get a feel of the situation here. However, there was one thing that she could guarantee. She would definitely go down this tomb. Ahem, haven't you heard of the rumor about the ancient tomb? We've been stationed here for a long time. Many people have entered the tomb, but none of them have come out alive. Even so, do you still want to enter? Yu Bufan kindly reminded her. If Yun Jian wasn't from Country Z, Yu Bufan might not have stopped Yun Jian. He just didn't want to see people making unnecessary sacrifices. "Yes, I have to enter." Yun Jian agreed with Yu Bufan. The reason why she had to enter was firstly because of CE, and secondly because the ancient tomb contained the secret of the sandalwood box. It wasn't that she didn't want to know the reason why she was reborn. She, too, was very eager to find the answer. If she could be reborn, then if she found the secret of her rebirth, would she be able to revive her brother? Although this was just empty talk, Yun Jian was willing to give it a try. She had even encountered such a rare thing like being reborn. Perhaps her brother could be revived too. "Alright, if you really want to enter the tomb, I have 2 friends here who are going to enter the tomb tomorrow. If you don't mind, you can go with them," Yu Bufan said. In order to prove that he was not a liar, he deliberately explained, "It's like this. My 2 friends have been waiting here for several days. They have already gathered a group of people who want to go into the tomb together. Since you all want to go into the tomb, and we don't know what will happen when we enter the tomb, my friends plan to gather a group of people to go together. This way, we can take care of each other." Yu Bufan didn't mention that his friends' friends were. This was Yuz's group's Z.
Team teams 4 team. Yu Bufan was overjoyed when he heard this. He hurriedly brought Yun Jian to find his 2 friends. Although Yun Jian didn't look powerful, it was always good to have one more person as a guarantee and a sense of security. Yu Bufan's 2 friends were about the same age as him. When they saw Yun Jian, they expressed their goodwill towards her. Yu Bufan's 2 friends were one tall and one short. The tall and thin one was called Bo Zhan, while the short and fat one was called Fu Xian. Chapter 208. Nice to meet you, welcome to the team. Bo Zhan extended his hand to welcome Yun Jian. Yun Jian nodded slightly, not intending to shake his hand. Bo Zhan did not feel awkward and changed the topic. The rest of the team will be exploring the area around the tomb tomorrow. They'll be back soon. Not long after he said that, a group of 5 to 6 people appeared in front of them. Bo Zhan pointed at Yun Jian and introduced her to them. You guys are back. This is Yun Jian, she's our new partner. She'll be going into the tomb with us tomorrow. Oh my god. She's going into the tomb. Before Bo Zhan could finish, he was interrupted by a woman who was dressed up to the nines. The woman looked surprised. She looked at Yun Jian from head to toe a few times before sighing to Yun Jian. Little girl, are you 18 years old this year? The woman made a tsk sound as she spoke. Yun Jian glanced at the woman and ignored her. The woman stood out among the group of men. After all, she was the only woman in the group who was going into the tomb. The woman's name was Enchanting. It was a nice name and her facial features were not bad. However, she looked unnatural because of the pink and green foundation and eyeliner on her face. More importantly, Enchanting's body had a strong pungent perfume smell, which made it hard for people to like her. Plus, her tone of voice was even more repulsive. It was just that Enchanting did not think that way. When she saw Yun Jian ignoring her, she was infuriated. It was because Yun Jian was the only girl in the group, so Enchanting wanted to find a temporary friend who would not make her look like she was walking alone. That was why she talked to Yun Jian. She did not expect Yun Jian to be so disrespectful. Enchanting was not a pushover either. She immediately muttered to Yun Jian in front of everyone, "Tsk. Who do you think you are? Why do you insist on following us when you're so arrogant and powerful? If you have the guts, go to the tomb by yourself." Enchanting was a typical, "if you don't obey me, I won't let you have an easy time," kind of person. However, her words did not provoke Yun Jian in the slightest. "Enchanting, can't you behave yourself?" A handsome 27 or 28 years old man standing next to Enchanting growled at her in a low voice. Then, the man looked at Yun Jian apologetically and said, "Little girl, I apologize on her behalf. Please don't mind what she said. Ling Tianhao, how dare you scold me for someone else? I didn't do anything wrong." Enchanting saw the man apologize to Yun Jian. Her face changed and she couldn't help shouting. The man called Ling Tianhao frowned. His disgust for Enchanting disappeared in a flash. Other than Yun Jian, everyone present knew that Enchanting and Ling Tianhao were a couple. However, what they did not know was that Enchanting's love for Ling Tianhao was one-sided. The reason why Ling Tianhao agreed to be with Enchanting was that he and Enchanting's brother were both soldiers. They were good friends and comrades in arms. Once, they were on a mission together. Enchanting's brother sacrificed himself to save Ling Tianhao. At the same time, he entrusted his sister, Enchanting, to Ling Tianhao. Ling Tianhao could not bear to refuse, so he stayed with Enchanting for 3 years. In these 3 years, he did not develop any feelings for Enchanting. Instead, he hated her more and more. Chapter 209. Yun Jian glanced at Ling Tianhao and Enchanting. She could guess their relationship. She ignored Enchanting's aggressive words and replied to Ling Tianhao, "I don't care about the howling of a mad dog." She didn't come here to quarrel with them, so she didn't care about Enchanting's behavior.
Yi Yunting was even angrier. She pointed at Yun Jian and was about to walk over. She rolled up her sleeves and pretended to fight. You called me a dog? How dare you call me a dog? You. Enough. Yi Yunting, do you still want to go to the tomb with us? If you say one more word, you can go home. Ling Tianhao yelled at Yi Yunting in the next second. At the same time, Ling Tianhao forcefully dragged Yi Yunting away to prevent the conflict from escalating. The rest of the people looked at each other. They were all dissatisfied with Yi Yunting. After Ling Tianhao dragged Yi Yunting away, Yun Jian got to know the rest of them as well. She also knew that they were with Ling Tianhao. Actually, we are special forces. The man who just went over there is also one of our teammates. His name is Ling Tianhao. He was ordered to go into the tomb to investigate the situation. The man in the military posture smiled bitterly as he spoke. The man who looked like a soldier was called Sun Jianxiong. Sun Jianxiong waved his hand with a bitter smile. He waved his hand in the direction where Ling Tianhao and Yi Yunting were walking. Then he sighed and said, "Sigh, Tianhao is such a good person. How could he be involved in such a thing? When old Yi left, he shouldn't have entrusted his sister to." Sun Jianxiong sighed. At this moment, a tall and sturdy man elbowed him in the stomach and interrupted him. "Old Sun, don't talk so much. Be careful that Yi Yunting doesn't hear you. She'll make a scene again." Fine. It's useless to say more. I won't talk anymore." Sun Jianxiong smiled awkwardly and turned to ask Yun Jian, "Oh right, little girl, why do you want to go to the tomb? You can't enter the tomb unless you have no other choice. It's very dangerous inside." You. Sun Jianxiong had good intentions, but Yun Jian smiled and interrupted him. She said, "My name is Yun Jian. I have a reason why I have to enter." Since Yun Jian said so, they didn't ask anything more. Yun Jian had also figured out the situation of this group of people. Bo Zhan and Fu Xian were together. They were both members of the Flying Dragon archaeological team and friends of Yu Bufan. The two of them heard that the tomb was dangerous, so they gathered people to go down the tomb with them. That was how they met Ling Tianhao, Sun Jianxiong, and the others. Other than Yi Yunting, who was forced to come along, Ling Tianhao and the others were members of a special force from Z country. They were going into the tomb to carry out their mission. Yun Jian knew that there were many special forces in country Z, but not many of them could be classified as advanced special forces. As for whether they were related to Gu Junjian, there was nothing to say. Yi Yunting and Ling Tianhao came back when the sky was dark. She didn't know how Ling Tianhao comforted Yi Yunting, but both of them had calmed down by the time they came back. They set up a tent for Yun Jian and then went to pack their things. These things were naturally necessary for the trip to the tomb the next day. Yun Jian also took out the things in her backpack and counted them. "Hey, look, there's another car coming." At this moment, a tall and large off-road vehicle drove over in an overbearing manner, flashing past in front of everyone. There was a huge unique skull on the front of the SUV, which attracted everyone's attention. The one who spoke was Sun Jianxiong. Bo Zhan's eyes widened as he watched the off-road vehicle drive past. He was currently pointing at the SUV's tracks and exclaiming softly, Isn't that Gu Sha mercenary's car? I can't be wrong about the symbol on the car. No one would dare to imitate that symbol." As soon as he said this, everyone was horrified. Chapter 210. Kosha Mercenaries. It was the international mercenary organization that was famous all over the world. Ling Tianhao, Sun Jianxiong, and the rest's expressions changed upon hearing Bo Zhan's words. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows slightly. Of course, she saw the logo on the car. It was undoubtedly Kosha Mercenaries. However, it was too dark for her to see clearly who was in the car. What Kosha Mercenaries? Yi Yunting raised her eyebrows in disdain and asked. It's just a small organization. Look at how scared you are.
It's not like we're in a sci-fi movie. Yi Yunting mumbled. Yi Yunting was a typical lady who was raised in her boudoir. Naturally, she had never heard of international assassin organizations. That was why she scoffed when she saw the terrified expression on everyone's faces when they heard about kosher mercenaries. Sun Jianxiong and the rest almost slapped Yi Yunting when they heard what she said. It would be fine if Yi Yunting said that to them. If she said that in front of kosher mercenaries, not only would she die, but all of them would die with her. Yi Yunting, shut up. It was the first time Sun Jianxiong yelled at Yi Yunting, who had nothing to do with him. Kosher mercenaries. We can't afford to offend them. Yi Yunting, you better restrain yourself. Otherwise, you don't have to come with us. Even the usually calm Fu Xian threatened Yi Yunting. With that, no one gave Yi Yunting an explanation. However, Yi Yunting really shut her mouth after hearing what everyone said. She was really afraid that Bo Zhan and Fu Xian would refuse to bring her along. Even if Ling Tianhao wanted to bring her along, there was nothing he could do. However, Yi Yunting did not stop there. She could not help but grit her teeth in grievance. What kosher mercenaries? How could they be so powerful? She did not believe it. Everyone, pack up and rest early. We'll enter the tomb tomorrow morning. Bo Zhan said with a frown. After everyone heard this, they immediately dispersed. Yun Jian, on the other hand, only slightly hid her lip gloss. She didn't know who from the kosher mercenaries was sitting in the off-road vehicle. Perhaps he would be able to meet them after entering the tomb. Therefore, Yun Jian went back to the tent after checking the things in the bag. He had a dreamless night. The next day, at 4 or 5 o'clock, autumn turned to winter. The sun had not risen yet, and the sky was pitch black. Yun Jian turned over and got out of bed. By the time Bo Zhan and the rest woke up, Yun Jian was already done with her morning training and had put on all her equipment. Let's gather and depart, Bo Zhan said once everyone was awake. Bo Zhan then bade farewell to Yu Bufan and the rest, and the group headed towards the ancient tomb. Yun Jian walked at the back of the group. She had been observing the surroundings along the way. When they arrived at the entrance of the tomb, it was already 8:30 in the morning. What appeared in front of them was a dried-up well. When the ancient tomb was excavated, it was found in a dried-up well. Therefore, there was only one way to enter the tomb, and that was to go down this deep dried-up well. Who's going first? Bo Zhan asked after tying the rope. Yi Yunting, since you're so good, why don't you go first? Sun Jianxiong suggested as he saw that Yi Yunting was unhappy. I. Yi Yunting shuddered violently. She looked at the dried-up well fearfully and took 2 steps back. Of course, she would not be the first to enter the tomb. Suddenly, she had an idea and pointed at Yun Jian. You're the last to join us, of course you should go first. The first person to enter the tomb might accidentally trigger the mechanism, so Yi Yunting would rather die than be the first to enter. I'll go first, Bo Zhan said. I'll go first. Yun Jian's eyes flickered. She walked over and pulled the rope. Without any hesitation, she stood in front of the dried-up well and jumped in swiftly. Everyone was stunned as well. After all, the warning that no one who enters the tomb will survive was still there. Who could guarantee that those who entered the tomb would not be killed on the spot by the mechanism? Chapter 211. Although that was what everyone thought, after Yun Jian, Bo Zhan led them into the tomb one by one. Yi Yunting was pushed into the well by Ling Tianhao. She wanted to give up when she saw how deep the well was. However, Ling Tianhao pulled her down mercilessly and she followed suit. At the same time, Yun Jian turned on the flashlight as she was the first to enter the tomb. She looked around and found that there was a secret passage at the bottom of the well. She raised her head and looked at the top of the well, but all she saw was darkness. Even the sun couldn't shine through. She could not even see Bo Zhan and the rest who were standing outside the well, let alone hear their voices.
It was very strange. However, Yun Jian did not have to wait long before Bo Zhan and the rest came down one by one. How is it? Is there a way out? Bo Zhan asked Yun Jian after he came down. At the same time, he was fiddling with the communicator in his hand. The signal was full. There's only one way. Yun Jian pointed at the only passage in front of them and said. They're all down. Let's go then. Bo Zhan turned on the flashlight he had prepared and let Yun Jian keep hers while he led the way. Yun Jian did not intend to stand out. She turned off the flashlight and followed behind Bo Zhan. Are we really leaving? This place is so dark, and it's so narrow and small. Enchanting swallowed her saliva in fear and looked around cautiously. Now you know how to be afraid. You insisted on following us and said you were not afraid of anything. Now you know how to be afraid? It's too late. Sun Jianxiong could not stand it and rebuked Enchanting. All right, stop talking. Let's keep up. Ling Tianhao mediated in time. He did not wait for Enchanting and followed the group. Enchanting saw that Ling Tianhao had left and quickly followed. The secret passage was very narrow and small. It was only enough for one person to walk through with a bent back. It was difficult for people who were too big to walk. Although Fu Xian was fat, it was not to the point where it was strenuous for him. Stay close. Bo Zhan took the lead and instructed the people behind him as he heard the sound of wind blowing. The ground was covered with a thick layer of mud. Along the way, there were many footprints on the mud. Obviously, there were many people who had entered the tomb, but none of the footprints led to the outside. After walking for about 10 minutes, Yun Jian found that the deeper they went, the wider the narrow secret passage became. In the end, not only were they able to stand up straight, they could even feel the vastness in their arms. Wait, there's no way out. At the end of the journey, Bo Zhan realized that he was surrounded by walls made of mud and rocks. There was no longer a path to continue moving forward. What? Wasn't this the only entrance? How could there be no road just like that? Did you guys go the wrong way? You're leading the way. Enchanting shouted in surprise. There's a trap. Bo Zhan frowned and turned to look at his assistant, Fu Xian. Old Xian, help me find the trap. As he spoke, Bo Zhan took out a bunch of tools from his backpack. Bo Zhan and Fu Xian were experts in tomb raiding, so they were experts in finding traps. Ling Tianhao, Sun Jianxiong and the rest naturally did not know this, so they just stood there and waited. Before Bo Zhan could take out the tools from his backpack, a young girl's melodious voice was heard. You don't have to look for it. Yun Jian then walked to a corner in front and continued, the trap is here. You know where it is? Hee hee, don't mess around, all right. Who do you think you are? You're so awesome. You. Enchanting already had a lot of opinions about Yun Jian. Now, it was as if she had caught Yun Jian's weakness. She started babbling. Boom, at the same time, Yun Jian had arrived at the corner. She brushed away some of the mud on the ground, revealing a small trap. Chapter 212. The mechanism was activated, and the passageway appeared. Enchanting's mouth, which had been scolding Yun Jian, fell silent in an instant. Her actions just now were like a clown jumping ship. It was hilarious and ridiculous. Yun Jian, how did you know there was a mechanism here? Bo Zhan was the first to ask Yun Jian. There was still a trace of surprise and astonishment on his face. The soil here shows signs of loosening. Someone must have opened the mechanism before us. It's not hard to find it. Yun Jian explained and used the soil to cover the mechanism. This. If someone had opened the mechanism before, why did you cover it up? Also, why did you cover it up too? Ling Tianhao asked, puzzled. Those who came here naturally didn't want anyone to enter the tomb before them and fight with them for the treasures in the tomb. Yun Jian grinned,
revealing a row of white teeth. She smiled gently and explained, "Me too." Actually, that was not the reason why she covered the mechanism up. Bojan and Fu Xian were both expert grave robbers and experts in studying all kinds of mechanisms in tombs. Although both of them heard Yunjian's answer, they were still secretly shocked. The mechanisms in the tomb were all interconnected. If the person who entered the tomb covered the switches, there must be a reason for it. The least they could do was to avoid triggering any dangerous traps. Both of them were not surprised by Yunjian's clever explanation. They looked at Yunjian a few more times. This 15-year-old girl, whom they thought was the weakest in the group, was not simple at all. Cough cough. Let's go down. Bojan held the torchlight and went down first. Yunjian followed him again. Then, the group continued walking. Boom, the strange thing was, when Enchanting was the last one to go down the tunnel, the mechanism behind her closed up automatically. Ah! The mechanism closed up on its own. How can this be? It closed up on its own. How are we going to get out? Is this place really like what the rumors say? It's only entry and not exit. What should we do? Are we going to die here? Enchanting was so frightened that she screamed. Her whole body was trembling and her voice was getting shriller and more terrified. Shut up. If you scream again, I'll kill you first. Yunjian suddenly turned her head and glared at Enchanting from the spacious staircase. Enchanting felt a chill run down her spine, and she didn't dare to make a sound in the pitch-black underground tunnel. Yunjian suddenly became fierce because she heard voices coming from an open space at the bottom of the stairs. That's right, it was a human voice. That was why she had fiercely ordered Enchanting to shut up. What's wrong? Did you find anything? Bojan turned to look at Yunjian and asked. Bojan no longer treated Yunjian as a child after she had discovered the mechanism at first glance. Although the mechanism was eye-catching, even Bojan, a famous tomb raider, could not spot it at first glance. It was obvious that Yunjian was not an ordinary person. There's someone downstairs, Yunjian said with her eyes downcast. She then walked past Bojan and hurried down the stairs. Is he down there? There's someone down there? How come we didn't hear anything? Sun Jinxiong was stunned. That's because your ears aren't working well, the burly man next door replied to Sun Jinxiong with a smile. The group continued to walk down until they reached an open space. Who would have thought that at the bottom of the dry well, after the mechanism was activated, there would be a secret passage leading downwards. After going down the stairs, there was an open space that was as big as a quarter of a basketball court. At this moment, there were two groups of people gathered here. Yunjian did not find the person she was looking for when she fixed her gaze on them. Chapter 213. Yunjian was visibly disappointed. It was within her expectations to see these people with skull markings on their arms. They were from the Kosha mercenaries, the same group that drove the off-road vehicle last night. Yunjian glanced at them and did not recognize them. This was normal. Yunjian was the boss of the Kosha mercenaries. Other than snake, lizard, tiger, leopard, and some high-ranking members of the Kosha mercenaries, she did not know any of the other members in her past life. Just like Su Zetian. He was the mafia boss of Longmen City and his status in Longmen City was unquestionable. However, he might not even be ranked in the Kosha mercenaries, let alone be recognized by Yunjian. It was a fact that these people were from the Kosha mercenaries with the skull markings on their arms. However, it was certain that they were not high-ranking members. As for the other group of people, they were all burly men in their prime. Their identities and origins were unknown. In contrast to Yunjian, the other group of people, as well as Bojan and the rest, paled when they saw the Kosha mercenaries with skull markings on their arms. They had actually bumped into the Kosha mercenaries. Tisk, tsk. How lively. At this moment,
the man standing at the front with the skull imprint on his arm laughed twice, and his sharp eyes turned fierce. This man was a member of the Kosha mercenaries, codenamed Bear. Might. Every member of the Kosha mercenaries had their own code names and did not reveal their real names. Bear. Might was not a high-ranking member of the Kosha mercenaries, nor was he on the top of the list. However, he could still be ranked in the top 99 of the Kosha mercenaries. This was enough for him to be arrogant in the underworld. Every member of the Kosha mercenaries would be ranked according to their ability. Usually, the top 20 would be occupied by the high-ranking members, while the top 50 would be the super elites of the Kosha mercenaries. Those who could be ranked in the top 100 of the Kosha mercenaries could already be arrogant in the underworld. Even someone like Su Zetian could only be ranked in the tens of thousands of the Kosha mercenaries. One could only imagine Bear Might's status. As long as he did not encounter any terrifying characters, it was enough for him to show off. Where are you guys from? Bear Might swept his gaze across the crowd, his murderous aura making everyone lower their heads as they trembled in fear. Even Bo Zhan and Fu Xian had to soften their stance under Bear Might's oppression. But at this moment, Yi Yunting's desperate voice sounded again. They're from the Kosha mercenaries, I think they're no big deal. They're all humans with a pair of eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Yi Yunting had been suppressing her anger and had nowhere to vent it. Seeing how everyone was so fearful of this Gu Sha mercenaries man, she had forgotten all about Sun Jinxiong, Fu Xian, and the rest's warning to her. In order to stand out and be the center of attention, Yi Yunting spoke up. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and stood at the side in silence. Bear Might's cheerful expression darkened instantly after he heard Yi Yunting's belittling. Although he was arrogant, he could not bear to see others bad-mouthing the Kosha mercenaries. He immediately took out a Browning pistol from his pocket and pointed it at Yi Yunting, roaring, F***CKU, how dare you insult the dignity of the Kosha mercenaries. Bo Zhan and the rest gasped at the sight of Bear Might taking out his pistol in a fit of rage. Everyone was cursing Yi Yunting for being blind and regretting agreeing to let such a foolish woman like Yi Yunting join them. Yi Yunting was so frightened that she knelt on the ground. When she saw the shiny pistol in Bear Might's hand, she was so scared that she was on the verge of collapsing. She finally understood that the few words she had casually said had brought disaster upon herself. Gun. Yi Yunting's expression changed and she stepped back. How dare you insult the Kosha mercenaries, I'll send you all to hell with this bitch. Bear Might reloaded the gun domineeringly and glared at Yun Jian, Bo Zhan, Fu Xian, Ling Tianhao, and the rest. If Yi Yunting said something wrong, it would implicate everyone else. This was the reason why everyone was afraid of offending the Kosha mercenaries. Chapter 214. Just when everyone was frightened by the scene in front of them and thought that they were all going to die because of that B***tch Yi Yunting, a gentle voice came from behind them. A light female voice was heard. It's up to you whether you want to kill Yi Yunting or not, but don't even think about touching the others. Yun Jian looked at Bear Might and stared straight at him. She was not intimidated by his aura at all. Bo Zhan and the rest were indeed no match for Bear Might. Bear Might was also an assassin, although he was not ranked on the international assassin chart. However, in front of Bo Zhan and the rest, to be honest, killing them was like squashing a bunch of ants. This was the strength of the Kosha mercenaries. A member of the Kosha mercenaries could fight against 100 people at once. Yun Jian, how dare you ask him to kill me? How can you be so vicious? Do you have a conscience? If we didn't bring you in, you probably wouldn't even be able to enter this place. And now you're abandoning me. Yi Yunting was really scared when she heard that and started to curse at Yun Jian. She did not even think about how she had failed to bully Yun Jian and forced her to do so. And who are you? Bear Might ignored Yi Yunting's words and looked straight at Yun Jian.
His instincts told him that this girl was not simple. Even Bo Zhan and the rest of the men would sweat and tremble in fear when they saw their guns pointed at them. Yun Jian was not moved at all. On the contrary, she stood out to vouch for the rest. Bear. Might was arrogant, but he always remembered that he was a member of the Kosha mercenaries. How could Bear Might, who was able to squeeze into the top 100 of the Kosha mercenaries, be a decisive person who would kill without knowing the background of the other party? If that was the case, he would not have survived until now. We are not enemies. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and looked at Bear Might from the side and replied. After saying that, she turned around and walked towards Yunting under everyone's gazes. What are you doing? Yunting took 2 steps back, looking at Yun Jian, who was walking toward her with a menacing aura. Yunting retreated step by step until she reached a corner and could no longer retreat. Has anyone ever told you that you can't afford to offend the Kosha mercenaries? Yun Jian gave a sinister smile. It was extremely creepy. Yunting backed away in fear, shaking her head as she looked at the shiny gun in Bear Might's hand and cried out fearfully, I'm wrong, I'm really wrong. Yun Jian, plead for mercy for me. Save me, I can't die. Yunting thought that Yun Jian was planning to sacrifice herself to protect herself and the others. Of course, of course, of course, of course, of course, of course, of course. It was only at this moment that Yunting reacted. Any member of Gu Sha mercenaries could pull out a pistol and kill anyone they wanted. This organization was definitely not the small one she had mentioned earlier. Save you? The dignity of the Kosha mercenaries is not something you can slander. Yun Jian curled her lips. She looked at the frightened Yunting and narrowed her eyes. The Kosha mercenaries? Could it be that Yun Jian was a member of the Kosha mercenaries? After hearing Yun Jian's words, everyone widened their eyes and stared at her in shock. She was actually a member of the Kosha mercenaries? How old was she? Even Bear Might and the others were completely dumbfounded. Yun Jian looked at Bear Might and said, how do you deal with outsiders slandering the Kosha mercenaries? It was an absolute order. Yun Jian was born with the aura of a king. Even Xiong Wei, who was aggressive just now, did not know about Yun Jian's identity and status and was willing to yield. Chapter 2:15. Anyone who slandered the Kosha mercenaries will be killed without mercy. Yun Jian repeated. She stared at Yunting with a murderous look in her eyes. She was the one who set this rule. So, why don't you do it? Yun Jian turned her head and ordered Bear Might. Bear Might and his men were completely stunned on the spot. Logically speaking, Yun Jian and Yunting were on the same side. Now that Yunting had slandered the Kosha mercenaries, this little girl not only claimed to be a member of the Kosha mercenaries, but also asked him to kill Yunting, who had entered the tomb with her. Yunting was completely shocked. She did not expect Yun Jian to be a member of the Kosha mercenaries. In spite of it, Yunting did not forget to ask for help. Seeing that Yun Jian's pleas were futile, she scrambled to Ling Tianhao and tugged at his pants, wailing, Tianhao, save me, save me. They have guns, they're going to kill me. I don't have a brother anymore. You said you would protect me. Yunting's brother had died to save Ling Tianhao. Before he died, he asked Ling Tianhao to take care of his sister. Yunting had been holding Ling Tianhao's weakness against him. At this moment, Ling Tianhao did not even look at her. Of all the people you could have messed with, you had to mess with the Kosha mercenaries. The Kosha mercenaries is the #1 assassin organization in the world. Do you still want to live after provoking it? Sun Jianxiong roared at Yunting in disappointment. He really did not like Yunting. If old Yi, who had sacrificed himself to save Ling Tianhao, was not Yunting's brother, Ling Tianhao and Sun Jianxiong would not even look at Yunting. The #1 assassin organization. The Kosha mercenaries was actually an assassin organization. Hearing the words, assassin organization, Yi Yunting's entire body was paralyzed. Who could tell her that these assassins and organizations that she had only seen in movies actually existed? More importantly, she had actually provoked this power. On the other side, Bear might heard Yun Jian's words, but he didn't move. He looked at Yun Jian and no longer looked at her with hostility. Instead, he asked in a probing tone, "May I know your code name in the organization?" In the Kosha mercenaries, there had always been an unwritten rule. A person's code name represented that person. At the same time, the higher the ranking, the higher the position in the Kosha mercenaries. The meaning behind Bear Might's question was obvious. If Yun Jian's status was higher than his, then he would definitely be respectful to Yun Jian. However, if Yun Jian's position in the Kosha mercenaries was lower than his, then Bear Might would not listen to Yun Jian. Just as Bo Zhan and the rest were slowly accepting Yun Jian's identity, the frivolous conversation between Yun Jian and Bear Might was heard again. "You don't deserve to know." Yun Jian looked at Xiong Wei and crossed her arms. Indeed, he didn't deserve to know. Yun Jian was the boss of the Kosha mercenaries. Even the super elites in the top 20 to 50 were not qualified to meet her. Moreover, Bear Might was just a small fry in the top 100. F***ck, this little girl is so arrogant. Bro, you probably weren't even born when we joined the Kosha mercenaries. A man standing beside Bear Might could no longer hold it in and was about to punch Yun Jian. However, he was stopped by Bear Might. Bear Might was quite observant. After all, being in the top 100 was already considered impressive. Yun Jian admired Bear Might's ability to hold it in. She pursed her red lips and smiled at Bear Might and his group. Then, her gaze fell on Bear Might. "You're Lizard subordinate, right?" Snake. Lizard's position in the Kosha mercenaries was obvious. Yun Jian actually called her Lizard. Could it be that this little girl's status was higher than Snake? Lizards? Then she was. Chapter 216. Yun Jian saw Xiong Wei's expression change. She stopped smiling and looked at Xiong Wei. "You don't have to guess my identity. You just need to tell me whether you work for Lizard or not." Being exposed, Bear Might stopped hesitating and nodded respectfully. "That's right. I'm Lord Snake. Lizard subordinate." Although Xiong Wei worked for Snake Lizard, he was only one of Snake Lizard subordinates. He rarely interacted with Snake Lizard. Naturally, he was not as important as the raccoon who gave Yun Jian a sports car. "Okay." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and nodded. "I'm done. You can continue what you were doing," Yun Jian told Bear Might as she stepped aside to reveal Yi Yunting, who was trembling in fear in the corner. She was reminding Xiong Wei not to forget to kill Yi Yunting, who dared to slander Kosha mercenaries. "Okay." Xiong Wei and the others had already submitted to Yun Jian. Xiong Wei pulled the trigger of the Browning and pointed the gun at Yi Yunting. "Ah." Yi Yunting covered her eyes and kept saying, "Don't kill me, I'm wrong, no, wait." Ling Tianhao could not bear to see the sister of his comrade die in front of him. This was his promise to his comrade. Ling Tianhao was a smart man. After watching what happened, he knew that the decision of whether Yi Yunting could live or not was in the hands of Yun Jian, who they had underestimated from the beginning. Ling Tianhao looked at Yun Jian and begged, "Sister Yun Jian, can you let her go for my sake?" Ling Tianhao was told by Yi Yunting's brother to take care of her. He did not want to break his promise. Otherwise, even if Yi Yunting died in front of him 1,000 times, he would not even blink. "Oh." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and raised her eyebrows at Ling Tianhao. After knowing the relationship between Ling Tianhao and Yi Yunting, it was not surprising that Ling Tianhao would beg him to spare Yi Yunting. Xiong Wei's hand that was about to pull the trigger paused when Yun Jian responded to Ling Tianhao. Why should I let her go for your sake? Who are you to me? Yun Jian's next words made Ling Tianhao and the others' eyelids twitch. The Kosha mercenaries had never let anyone go for the sake of a certain someone. But that's fine. It's troublesome to dispose of the corpse after killing someone here, Yun Jian muttered to herself. Then, she looked at Bear. Might and said to him, do as you see fit. Let her live. However, for someone who slandered the Kosha mercenaries, she can be spared from death, but she must be punished. Yun Jian's command actually made Xiong Wei want to obey absolutely. He nodded and answered, yes. Let's continue. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes again and smiled like an ordinary girl, bright and youthful. However, when the others thought of how she did not care about Yi Yunting's life, they felt their hair stand on end. How did Bear might deal with Yi Yunting? He dislocated Yi Yunting's arms and legs on the spot. Yi Yunting cried out in pain and then fainted, but no one cared about her. At least she kept her life. That was already very lucky. There's no road ahead. We've been searching here for a long time. After Bear might finished dealing with Yi Yunting, he walked over to Yun Jian and said respectfully. He thought he could guess Yun Jian's identity. Apart from that person, who else could have such a kingly aura? Chapter 217. There's no road ahead. Yun Jian pursed her lips. She looked around and smirked. She had already realized that they were surrounded by mud walls and there was no way out. It was a dead end. Even the exit above has been sealed, Bear might explained once again. As he spoke, Bear might explained in more detail, only when someone from the outside comes in will the exit be opened. However, it will quickly merge back together. Otherwise, we will be trapped here until we die. If Yi Yunting had not fainted at this time, she would have been scared to the point of screaming after hearing this. But she probably did not even have the strength to stand up now. Since there's no way out, we'll blow one up. Yun Jian smirked. She turned her head and looked at Bear Might's bulging backpack. Is there a bomb? Bo Zhan and the rest were dumbfounded when Yun Jian asked Bear Might such a strange question. They were here to rob a tomb. Who would bring a bomb to rob a tomb? But they did not know the members of the Kosha mercenaries. Any member of the Kosha mercenaries would carry a huge backpack when they were out on a mission or venturing into a dangerous place. There must be a bomb in the backpack. But the bomb's power was moderate. It wasn't the kind of dangerous bomb that would kill everyone around it if it was thrown. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Bear Might took out a mini-bomb from his backpack and handed it to Yun Jian. There is. Everyone was stunned. The Kosha mercenaries carried bombs with them at all times. What are you going to do with the bomb? Bo Zhan stood beside Yun Jian and asked her. Bo Zhan's question was on point. They were looking for a trap in the tomb. Why would they take out a bomb for no reason? Did they want to blow this place up so that no one would be able to leave alive? There's wind on the other side. That means there's a passage behind this mud wall. But this mud wall is blocking our way. Yun Jian pointed at a spot and explained. Everyone was dumbfounded. Why didn't they hear the wind on the other side? That's strange. If that's the case, there must be a trap here, right? Isn't it bad to blow up the meeting like this? Sun Jianxiong asked suspiciously. As he spoke, he continued to analyze. Moreover, there should have been quite a number of people who found the mechanism and went to the other side of the mud wall before us. So why should we just blow it up? Because I'm too lazy to wait for you guys to slowly find the mechanism. Besides, I have a bomb. Wouldn't it be more convenient to just blow it up? Yun Jian raised her eyebrows at Sun Jinxiong. She snapped her fingers and swung the bomb in her hand leisurely. She couldn't wait to find him. This explanation left everyone speechless. At this time, Yun Jian warned, "You guys stay away." After everyone had retreated a distance away, Yun Jian ignited the bomb and threw it at the mud wall. She didn't look the least bit flustered as she lay on the ground. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The dust and dirt that flew up from the explosion hit them in the face. After the dust and dirt settled on the ground, everyone shone their flashlights at the small hole that was blasted open by the explosion. In front of the small hole, on the other side of the mud wall, was a passageway. "It's really a passage," Sun Jianxiong shouted in surprise. At the same time, he turned his head and saw that the girl seemed to have everything under control. He couldn't help but gulp. Chapter 218. Let's go. Yun Jian stood up and patted her dusty clothes. She took the lead and walked towards the small hole that was blown up. When the others saw this, they all followed suit. Yi Yunting had fainted. Ling Tianhao had no choice but to stay even though he did not want to care about her. At this moment, other than the two of them, the others continued to move forward. There was no way back. The only thing left for them was to move forward. Tap, tap, tap. The surroundings were so quiet that only the sound of footsteps could be heard, and the endless darkness that could be seen when one looked up. Splash, 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 there seemed to be the sound of flowing water in the distance. There's the sound of flowing water over there. Everyone moved forward quickly in surprise. There's also human voices. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She took the lead and suddenly said this. Everyone was stunned out of habit. No one heard human voices, except for Yun Jian. However, after the incident where Yun Jian directly blew up the tunnel, everyone had tacitly chosen to believe her words. As expected, after walking for about 4 to 5 minutes, mixed human voices came from the other end of the tunnel. Yun Jian and the others could feel it as well. The passage was gradually widening again. Until finally, a mud hole the size of a basketball court appeared in front of everyone's eyes. On this empty land, groups of people and horses were all gathered together. Some even set up tents on this open space. Soon, everyone realized that these people were the ones who entered the tomb and did not come out again. Beside this huge mud hole, there was a stream of water that came from nowhere. It flowed out from the first corner and then flowed out from the last corner. The most amazing thing was that this stream of water, which came from an unknown source, was filled with lively little fish and shrimps. There were quite a lot of them. This was the world of the underground people. Not to mention Bo Zhan and the others, even Yun Jian could not help but smile. At this moment, Sun Jianxiong and the others seemed to have seen someone they knew in the crowd. Professor Su. Sun Jianxiong and the others rushed forward. You guys are here too. The man called Dr. Su was full of energy. He was about 50 or 60 years old and was a very energetic old man. Professor Su was also stunned when he saw Sun Jianxiong and the others. It was obvious that Sun Jianxiong and the others had been sent to the tomb by Z country to look for Professor Su, who had also been buried. It could be seen that Professor Su held a high position in Z country and was highly valued. Professor Su, what's going on here? Why didn't anyone come out of the tomb? Sun Jianxiong asked. Yun Jian and the others stood in the distance and listened. Professor Su pointed at a stone door carved with dragons and phoenixes. He sighed and said, "It's not that we can't go back, it's that no one wants to." When everyone heard this, they were instantly stunned. Professor Su explained the whole story in detail. After the first person to enter the tomb discovered this place, he refused to leave. There was one reason: there were a few ancient characters engraved on the stone door with the dragon and phoenix carvings.
The experts and scholars studied it for several days and finally deciphered the translation of the ancient characters. The translated meaning of the words on the stone door was, "Pass through this stone door and you will know all the secrets of the sandalwood box." Of course, those who wanted to pass through this stone door had to stay here for a whole year. Everyone present was here to decipher the secrets of the sandalwood box. Of course, they refused to leave. Moreover, there were large numbers of fish and prawns in the flowing water. Once they stayed here, they could catch fish and prawns and cook them. They did not have to worry about starving to death. In the eyes of outsiders, the people who entered the tomb had already become horrifying skeletons. "Professor Su, since you're here, why don't you contact the outside world?" Sun Jianxiong asked the key question. Professor Su shook his head and smiled. "There's no signal here." After he said that, everyone took out their communicators and looked. There was no signal. Yun Jian came over while everyone was still in shock. She looked at Professor Su and asked, "May I ask if you've seen a handsome man who's about 19 years old and is 185 meters tall? There are 2 people with him." She was naturally asking about CE. She looked around but still could not find him. She could not help but worry. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.